This podcast is a production of Mutant Donkey. If you like Mutant Donkey, please consider supporting us on our Patreon at patreon.com/Mutant Donkey. You can also follow us on Twitter at Mutant_Donkey. We also have a presence on YouTube at the Mutant Donkey channel, so please like and subscribe if you like this. Thank you.
Mute Donkey. Donkey. Mute Donkey. Donkey.
Podcast.
Donkey. Donkey.
Podcast.
Donkey.
Podcast.
Donkey.
Mutant.
Donkey.
Podcast.
Mutant.
Mutant.
Donkey.
Podcast. So right now we have from California, and we have Ethansito from Texas. We have Kandyman from California, and then myself from somewhere else. Andrew's sick. Mopi may jump in or may not. She's been tired. She's had a tough weekend because she had like a formal last night, and then she has a dancing competition this weekend.
And so, the heavy drinking.
Yeah, well, that's my heavy drinking. They gotta put up with my heavy drinking. So, but I'm a happy drinker, so it's all good. But no, she's got a dancing competition tonight, also. So even if she jumps in with us, she will have to leave in a little bit anyway. So
that sounds good.
But anyway, I thought we would dedicate this podcast to Call of the Cthulhu, since I bought the Call of the Cthulhu role-playing book from Ben back at the Alcon, and I've been reading it a lot. And I also had bought the Necronomicon, which is the combined tales of H.P. Lovecraft. I bought it in 2009 when I met Kandyman down in San Diego for that comic.
Oh yeah, that might have been just no. I went one more time. It's really hard to get into Comic-Con now.
Yeah,
Really
after
hard.
that it was close to impossible unless you were in the industry to get down
I've
there.
tried several times and I haven't. They do like a thing where they do like a waiting room and you have to it's like a lottery basically, and it's just it's very, very difficult to get tickets now. I haven't been since the year after that. It's been a long time.
Okay, yeah, but anyway, that was when I bought the Necronomicon, his combined tales. It's got almost every short story he wrote in one book. It's a pretty heavy book. So
Wow.
I've been reading that book, and little by little I've been reading some of his short stories. And I was just talking about how I was talking to Ben in the interview about how immersive his storytelling method is, from the point of view that he writes like the stories actually happened. Like there's no transition between I'm telling a story. No, this is a person in a courtroom explaining what happened to him, and he's talking like it really happened, and it's all procedural and stuff like that. And he's telling them how he went down into this tunnel, and he had a friend with him, and they saw something, and then they ran off, and so it kind of drags you into his story. You sink into his story before you know it. You're not reading a story. You're reading an accounting of something that probably really happened. I'm not saying it really happened. It's fantasy, obviously, but
Right.
that's the effect that you get from the story. So, you being a writer, I don't know if you have any.
Well, the thing that I actually kind of like about some of those old pulp magazine type writers from that time period is it's all really soft. It's approachable. It's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but they do a great job with the language. There are classes you could give on Lovecraft and guys like Robert E. Howard. They loved the language. They really kind of, they really chewed it up whenever they were doing it. And the thing that I appreciated about Lovecraft, I mean, just that the fact that he was really willing to go there, that it was a complete commitment to something that would be really bizarre and kind of off-putting for the time.
Yeah.
And he was a bizarre and off-putting little guy, and he just owned it. It was really it's kind of fun to go back and check out his stuff.
And Ethansito just bought. Last weekend we went to the MagCon up in New Caney, Texas, which is about 45 minutes from where we live here in Houston. And we met some people. What did we do? Oh yeah, I bought him some books for the Conan the Barbarian role-playing game. And you were mentioning Robert E. Howard, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
they were pen pals with H.P. Lovecraft. So it's incredible to see how Pulp Fiction, a lot of what we like, everything has kind of like a Lovecraftian finger in it, even if it's not readily apparent. There's like 6 degrees or maybe less than 6 degrees of separation between Lovecraft and anything that we love in terms of gaming.
Yes.
I mean, there was a whole Lovecraftian set of monsters in D&D, wasn't there? I mean, there's like
Yes.
the Mind Flayers, for example.
Absolutely.
Those guys have tentacles, and they make you insane because they start draining your sanity, right? Is that one of their psionic attacks or something like that?
Yes. All I knew is that as soon as the mind flayers were in play, it was really just better to cut and run. I don't think we were ever capable of fully taking one of those guys down.
And that's pretty much what it is, I guess, in the Cthulhu role-playing game. Like Ben Burns was describing to me, that you either get all the clues, and then you have a chance of defeating the monster, or you just try to go at the monster and lose. Because no matter what kind of weapons you have, you're not going to win if you don't have the clues of how to defeat these things.
Well, and that was sort of the thing that made Lovecraft's style so special, is that he kept trying to write from that border between sanity and insanity, and the idea that the cosmic horror could just knowing your place in the universe and how small and insignificant you were would simply break your mind.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting. If you look at all the media that it's been kind of put into, I don't think there's ever been the definitive, really powerful work of, there's not like that one movie that's like, oh, this is exactly what you feel like whenever you see Lovecraft, or the video game that summarizes it perfectly. There was, trying to remember the name of it, but there was a first-person shooter for Call of Cthulhu. Okay. And one of the wrinkles in it was that if you kept seeing weird stuff, if you kept being exposed to all of these nightmares, you'd lose your sanity. And so for a brief time, you'd lose control of your character, and he would either just start blasting up a room or run away, or if you really got bad, he would just turn the gun on himself. So you're sitting there playing and playing and playing, and you're just about at a save point, and then your guy just nope, bang, and you were back at your last save.
Yeah, that's an interesting mechanic, because it's also in the Darkest Dungeon game, and I don't know if you've played it. I know you saw me playing it remotely one time.
I've seen you play it. I've never played it myself.
But there is that mechanic, like the evil wizards or dark cultists make you confused, and so you start shooting at your own people and randomly just doing stuff, and that happens every once in a while. So it's kind of frustrating because you start losing control of your own people. But it is kind of in that sense of Lovecraft. Also, your people start losing sanity, and at the end of adventures, you have to put them in the asylum, or you have to take them to the tavern so they can relax for a little bit and regain their sanity before you put them in a quest again. Thankfully, you have a roster of 20 people that you can mix and match while you let some people rest. But yeah, it's pretty...
I want to be in that tavern. I want to be in a tavern where people are literally drinking to become more sane.
Yep.
So, what are you in here for? Well... hard week at work. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday, and as it turns out, I've seen some horrible things this week.
Yeah, I mean, some people's work. Yeah, the monotony of some people's work almost makes them insane, like you're saying, to the point that that's why people get together during a happy hour, to kind of get a sense of what it's like to be normal again, or have control of something. Maybe, I don't know. Even though drinking is even though drinking is the opposite of taking control of things, it's more like losing control.
Yes.
But maybe losing control and not caring is the ultimate effect of alcohol. I don't know.
Well,
maybe.
I sure hope so.
Maybe for some people. I don't know.
That's been the premise I've been working under for a while now. So.
Good. But one of the key things that I want to touch about Lovecraft is part of the influence of his work was the fact that he had a lot of nightmares, a lot of vivid nightmares. So I wanted to touch with all three of you and see if you guys have any personal experience yourselves with any kind of very vivid nightmares that you had through your lives, and how that has affected your psyche in general.
Well, so first of all, I used to have a really vivid dream life. Now that I'm a parent, as soon as I get in bed, it's just all over. I don't remember anything until the next morning.
Yeah.
I used to have these really vivid dreams, a lot of them in high school. I'd actually come in and tell everybody, but the most vivid one that I had recently that really kind of shook me up is I had knee surgery right before my son was born. And so they put me on Vicodin because, of course, knee surgery is painful.
Yeah.
But I don't really like Vicodin because it gives me bad dreams.
Oh.
And so the second night that I'd taken the Vicodin, I also had a high fever. So it was a mix between this opioid and a high fever, and I had just the worst dream I've ever had in my entire life.
Sounds
and
like a bad trip.
it was. I just remember I was sitting in a room, and I heard my daughter crying at the time that this dream took place. She was just a little under 3. And I walked over to her bed, and she was like regressing back down through all of her stages.
Oh,
So she was
wow.
going from a toddler to a baby to infant to and she kept getting smaller and smaller, and just before she sort of as Bradbury would have put it, gone back to the seed death. I just heard her say, "Bye bye, Daddy," and then gone. And from that point, I'm like, you know what? I woke up and I'm like, I am going to let this knee hurt as much as it wants to. I've never taken this stuff again because I don't need that.
Wow. That kind of reminded me too. What was that Netflix series, The Haunted Hills or something? Ethan, you remember? Ethansito.
Couldn't tell you.
Watch it.
Oh.
I think it was House on Haunted Hill.
Or The Haunting of House on the Hill, maybe? But anyway, there was this sequence where the mom or somebody saw her daughter, and after she was dead and her jaw was taped shut because he was a corpse, and she gets up and she tries to speak, and it's like the most horrifying scene I've probably ever seen of any kind of horror, where the daughter knows that she's dead and she's in the corpse and she can't talk, because there's plenty of dreams that I've had where I try to talk and nothing comes out, right? And so you're like trying to say something, and it's
See, I've had those dreams where you can't talk too, but they're never nightmares.
Oh, they're not. Yeah, I've had some.
So it's just really pleasant. You're just sitting there and I'm just not hearing anything.
Yeah, no, not so for me.
And then all my teeth fall out.
Then, that's some weird thing. My teeth fall out in some of my dreams. I don't know why. That's a weird thing. But also that dream in that movie Poltergeist, where it's not a dream sequence. It's a sequence where the mother is trying to get to the kid's room, and the corridor keeps getting longer and she can't get there.
Yes.
And I think that's very much pattern after the dreams that people have, and very frustrating.
And the fact is that Lovecraft, being so xenophobic, would have had everything would have terrified him. So where our dreams have kind of a specific focus on what's really terrifying, for him it would just be everything outside of my door.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Kandyman, did you have anything to add? Do you have any dreams and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I think it's maybe it's more of a youth thing. I mean, I definitely used to have a lot more dreams when I was younger, like more vivid dreams that I could recall better.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was young, I used to have, I now think that they were night terrors. At the time, I just thought they were nightmares. But it was really like a recurring theme that I would like have these dreams that something was pulling me out of bed, like something was like, had a hold of like my leg or my arm and was like pulling me out of bed to the floor, and then I'd wake up and I'd be falling out of bed.
Oh wow!
And it was terror. I mean, like I have a friend that has a daughter who has night terrors,
mm-hmm.
and from what I understand, I think now that they were probably night terrors.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to just wake up and just basically, like, in fact, the worst part was I'd have these horrible dreams. I'd wake up and I would try to scream, and like I couldn't make a sound. Like I was just like too terrified to scream.
Yeah,
it was the worst. But now I just I just had a dream the other day that was kind of interesting. It was related to something. I think we were playing Monster Hunter. I think it was something about something. It was something we had talked about. And I kind of woke up, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had a dream about like that thing, but that was like 2 days ago. And like I said, as you get older, unless you write it down, they're gone.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They're gone. And I swear I have some dreams where I think that I have seen the future, but then I can't remember. And I know something's going to happen, and there's a trigger, and I know that part of my brain thinks that I have seen the future, and so I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, and it goes away. Like it's fleeting and bye-bye.
My wife had something similar to that, and I'm still watching for it because I want to see this come to fruition.
Yeah.
There was a TV show that Fox started running. I don't even know if it's still on because it wasn't especially good, called The Cool Kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of supposed to be this updated version of the Golden Girls or whatever. And we watched a couple of episodes because it's one of the producers, I think, is Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So, it's worth a watch.
Okay.
And it really wasn't worth a watch. No, it's too bad. But my wife woke up after we had watched like the second episode, and she's like, I had the weirdest dream last night that, like, in my dream, I wrote a whole episode of that show that was really funny, and it's like they're on a boat. And I'm like, I know for a fact that show, if it lasts any amount of time, they're going to have a old people on a boat episode, because, old people and cruises go together like strawberry and cheesecake, which they also serve on those cruises. But I think it's going to happen, because I'm relatively sure that my wife is a TV psychic.
Okay.
I'm hoping so, at any rate.
That's cool. And then Ethansito, do you remember any of the times you sleepwalked when you were younger?
Oh, yeah. I had a few of those instances. And I also had a couple times where I woke up and it was like I was still dreaming, even though I was awake.
Yeah.
So I would like see hallucinations of people in front of me, but then I would look away and then look back and they'd be gone.
Huh. And so that's like a state between dreaming and being awake?
I guess one time I was back at the old house. I woke up and there were like 3 angels in my bed and they were like playing cards.
Oh.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
What game was it, though?
I don't remember. I think it was just like poker or something, maybe Go Fish.
Huh.
And then I looked away and looked back and they were gone. And this other time, it was my first grade teacher who was like standing on the floor in my room because I had like a bunk bed, so it was up close to the ceiling. And then I remember it was like a weekend, so I woke up a bit later than usual, and she like pointed out the door, and I got up and I ran out the door.
Wait, but you were dreaming or you were awake or what?
No, I was awake. I woke up and she was like, "Go, Ethan," and she pointed towards the door. So then I got up and I went.
So basically, you perceived as if there was somebody actually there when you woke up, or were you awake the whole time?
No, it was like right after I woke up. Then I saw my first grade teacher standing in my room.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting whenever stuff like, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I was in college, when I was roommates with Mark the Narc, I had this dream. It's like about 2 or 3 in the morning. I had this dream that the two of us were on this giant pile of garbage and we were looking for something. I don't know what we were looking for, but we were rooting around in there. And I woke up, and I remember that I was awake because I had to go in. I went to the bathroom, and I remember thinking, wow, that's a really strange dream. And as I was walking back in to go to bed, Mark, who talked in his sleep regularly, rolled over and goes, "Hey, I found it. It's over here." And then he just rolled over and went back to sleep. And I was like, wait, what?
Wait, you guys were having a synchronized dream?
Right. So the next morning I'm like, Mark, did you have a dream last night where you were looking for something? And he had no recollection of what I was talking about because, of course, it sounds insane. And every time I tell somebody that story, they're like, oh, you were just dreaming. But,
but
I wasn't dreaming, and he might have been invading my dreams.
But that's the whole premise between the Call of the Cthulhu short story. And in the interview that's following, Ben Burns and I will talk a little bit about that. But in Call of the Cthulhu, when Cthulhu surfaces from where I left from the island, he starts inducing dreams in people, and they're kind of synchronized nightmares. And so people in different continents and different places will be sharing the same types of dreams. And he did refer to them, I think, more like night terrors. Where they'd be screaming, and when they wake up, they're all shaken, and they just don't want to go back to sleep because they're afraid to get back into that world. So what you said to me is actually extremely interesting, because you're saying that kind of thing, whether it comes from Lovecraft or not or whatever, it's not impossible.
Well, and the fact that if it is, an entity like Cthulhu, he's really into recycling and making sure that we use all of our resources, because we were going to find that, whatever it was.
You're going to find it, but you woke up before you found it, I guess.
Well, I did, but Mark didn't. Mark kept his eye on the prize.
I'm sure he found it and he didn't want to say anything.
Nah, that was probably what it was. Now he's got some special night thing that I don't, and I'll never know.
Yep. pretty much.
Wow.
In my history, I've have when I was younger, I did have a lot of, I don't know if they were borderline night terrors or dreams, like vivid dreams. I used to also sleepwalk, which is probably where Ethan gets it from, Ethansito. And this one time, I was staying at my cousin's house down in a different town, and I woke up because there was something funny with my back. It was like itching, and when I opened my eyes, I saw the full moon. And then I closed my eyes again. I'm like, oh, that's funny. There's a full moon. And then I'm like thinking, well, I shouldn't be able to see the moon because I'm sleeping inside. And so I opened my eyes again, and sure enough, there's the moon. There's the night sky. There's the stars, and I am outside in a common patio that's shared between a set of houses. And I had sleptwalk all the way outside of the house with my blankets, with my pillow, and I had plopped down apparently in the middle of the grass, and there I was. Sleeping, looking up into the sky. That's not the weird thing. The weird thing is I went back into the house with all my covers, this is the one way I can certify that the whole thing wasn't a dream, because I hit my foot on the step going into the house, and the next day my foot was sore from where I hit it right there.
Oh.
Because I had the blanket over my feet, so I couldn't see. I didn't see the step, so I hit it with the front of my foot. And then I went to go upstairs, and there was a staircase that went right up to my grandparents' bedroom where they were sleeping, and off to the right was my room. And I look up, and there's this figure in white looking away from me, like this figure that wasn't moving. And I'm like, oh, this is insane, I'm not going up. And I think I stayed down there for like 2 hours, not wanting to go up. And then I looked, and it was still there, not moving. I'm like, well, it hasn't done anything right now, so it's probably not going to do anything. So I gathered my courage, and I just like ran up. I made a left as I got to the landing, and I dove into my bed, and I hid under the covers, and then I fell asleep.
How old were you when this happened?
I was probably 9, maybe 8 or 9 years old.
Interesting.
The next morning, I was telling my grandparents, and they wouldn't believe me. And they said, because they said there was no blanket hanging in the room, there was nothing. I mean, I looked at the room thoroughly, and there wasn't anything. Either I was hallucinating, or something weird happened. Later, talking to one of my aunts, she said, and she was not the only one to say this, she said that it was an angel watching over me. Many people have actually said this to me when I tell them that story. But, once you open yourself up for that kind of thing, then basically everything's fair play. And if angels are real, that means that demons are real, right? So you can't have one without the other, in a sense. The second story was like a night terror that I had. Where I was in my uncle's house, who's deceased. He was my great uncle. He was the husband of my grandmother's sister, basically. And I was in their house, which was actually designed by my grandfather, who was also an architect. And I was in there, and there were people having a party and being really loud. And I remember he told me that my mission was to get these people out of his house because he didn't want people in his house. And so I was there trying to get these people out of his house, and I could tell he was going to be very mad at me if I didn't be successful in my mission. So anyway, I woke up in the middle of it, and I had like cold sweat, and I'm like, oh, this shit was not good. Like, I could tell this was beyond a regular nightmare. This was such a weird thing. Coincidentally, my grandparents this was like in the early 2000s. My grandparents were visiting from Colombia. They were here in Houston, and we were playing cards, and I told them about this. I said, I told my grandparents, Ernesto, which is the man's name, was asking me to get rid of all uninvited guests to his house. And then my grandparents kind of like went pale a little bit. And I'm like, what's wrong? And I said, Ernesto didn't want his wife, which is my grandmother's sister, to sell the house after he died. He left that on his will. And he had told them very sternly never to sell that house. They were showing that house because they were about to sell it. And weird stuff was happening in that house. Paintings were falling off. Things were crashing. Weird noises. Somebody was playing the piano. It was strange stuff was happening in the house. Even to this day, I just went to Colombia in January. End of January, early February. I spoke to them, and they told me strange things to this day are still happening in that house.
So Ernesto's just not having it.
He's not having it. And he was actually my pediatrician because he was a doctor. And actually, fun story to tell, he actually saved my life when I was about 4 years old. Because we went out have a picnic in some kind of field out in Colombia, and everybody fell asleep, and I was running. because somebody took off. There was a couple that took off, and I wanted to spy on them, so I took off running. And for some reason, Ernesto woke up and he screamed at me like, "Andres, like stop!" And I didn't know why he was screaming at me, and I stopped. And I was at the edge of a ravine. I was about to fall down a gorge into a waterfall. I was about to die, basically.
Oof.
And the man froze me in my tracks with one scream. And the guy was the most soft-spoken guy I've met in my life. But I never heard that man scream like that before. And I froze. And they came and got me before I fell. I mean, it was...
Wow.
I don't know if there was a connection that was forged at that moment, since technically that's the only man that has ever saved my life, So I don't know. Weird things. I guess you interpret that how you will. I'm not going to pretend to, say things are true or untrue, because I really don't know. But what I do know is that strange stuff that we can't really explain, either scientifically or otherwise, do happen, and we don't have a way to. And I'm not just talking to talk. Everything goes back to Lovecraft, to the way that he was dreaming, to the things that he put in his stories. And those things didn't come out of thin air. Those things came because of how kind of borderline mad he was in real life.
Yeah.
And all the real problems that he had.
And he had quite a few of them.
Yeah, and apparently he was a very prolific writer and a very picky one too. He would correct other people's writings and stuff like that. And in reading part of his biography, I was reading that he was also friends with Harry Houdini, and he actually ghost wrote some stories for Houdini, for either amazing or weird tales or something. And I guess before Houdini died or whatever. And
I'd love to go back and read some of those old ones.
Yeah,
Read some of those old pulp magazines and see what they were all about.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. And then it's just a shame, that Lovecraft died so young. I guess he was 47 maybe when he died. He died he was born in 1890, and he died in 37. So yeah, he was 47 years old when he died. And Robert E. Howard. Yeah, Robert E. Howard, I think he was even younger when he died. But Robert E. Howard actually committed suicide.
Howard punched his own clock.
Yeah.
He was a notorious mama's boy. And while he was sort of into the sort of virile masculinity that you see in Bran McMorn or Solomon Kane or Conan the Barbarian, he was very attached to his mother. If you ever are interested, there's a movie called The Whole Wide World. It's sort of a biopic with Vincent D'Onofrio that deals with his I guess love affair. He only really had kind of one real relationship with a woman that wasn't his mother. And it was a tumultuous one, just given the fact that he was kind of he was a pretty odd duck.
So Whole Wild World was a movie, or?
It was.
Oh, okay.
Still is, as far as I know.
Okay, when I typed it in, it told me it was an album. I'm trying to find the movie. Okay, there it is. Okay, I see it there. I'm gonna check it out. So that was about him?
Yes. And again, Vincent D'Onofrio does a great job of it. When I was first introduced to Howard, I had a...
Renee Zellweger is in this thing.
She is the love interest.
Interesting.
But yeah, I was working with a guy who was really into Howard. Saw the film, and he was like, "Yeah, I've read all these biographical pieces on him. I've read," and so he was describing all this kind of craziness that this guy went through, and he said the movie was actually pretty accurate. So,
okay, well, I'll have to watch that because I'm definitely interested. I think Ethansito would also be interested in watching that, since he's starting a game of Conan the Barbarian for us. So. So that should be fun. He still hasn't watched the Conan the Barbarian movies. I need to show him that.
Well, and let's be honest, if you're going to do that, it has to be the Schwarzenegger version.
Yep.
Much as I like Jason Momoa, he's just fine, but he's not my Conan.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's
I want everything low budget. I want Conan saying as little as possible.
Yep.
And, James Earl Jones. Can't go wrong.
You got it. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to read. Watch him too. Now, the Red Sonja, was that a spin-off of Conan, or was that its own thing?
So originally, it was. I don't remember if it was a direct spin-off, In other words, it was never really intended to be kind of in the same world, but whenever they made the Red Sonja movie, it was very much they were pulling heavily on, oh look, it's the same world as Conan, because there's Arnold Schwarzenegger and he's Conan, so Brigitte Bardot, she's got to be in that world too.
Yep. All right, cool. I did like the Red Sonja too. Thought that was a good movie. I mean, but last time I saw it was what, 30 years ago?
Yeah, seeing it whenever you're a teenager, that's about the right age. That's about when you want to. That's the sweet spot.
I was probably 15 or 14 when I saw that movie. The last time I saw it. So, I don't know. That's funny. So, but I think that we could touch on the derivative works of H.P. Lovecraft, things that have kind of stood on his work. And people that like Stephen King, that actually, great writers in their own right, if you like Stephen King. But, people that can hold their own, but that have also used Lovecraft as an inspiration for their works.
Well, and the thing that's kind of funny is if you're looking at movies for Lovecraft, I have never seen with the exception of the Dunwich Horror, which I love it's not even so much an ironic level, but I appreciate what it was trying for and how bizarre it was. Lovecraft stories don't really translate perfectly into movies. The last one I saw was it was just called Cthulhu. It was by this little production company. They were trying to do. Apparently, they focused on LGBT, media to try and kind of, bring that voice into the scene. And it was it wasn't Call of Cthulhu. It was it was sort of a derivation of it, but. Point is, just this guy goes home and they're trying to, he's gay and they don't approve of his lifestyle because he should be settling down and raising a family, and it turns out that they're like the priests of Cthulhu, and they're going to get him back into the straight lifestyle by having Tori Spelling try and put the moves on him. Yeah.
What is this, Scream?
I remember doing that a lot while watching it, because if I didn't mention it before, the key romantic subplot there was Tori Spelling.
Oh no.
So, but then you look at just all the different movies that have drawn on even just the imagery. I mean, you've got some of the classics of horror that, while they aren't Lovecraft specifically, that they don't exist without it. I mean, look at a movie like Event Horizon.
Yeah.
No tentacle monsters, but that subplot, that subconscious madness that's preying on everybody. The way it manifests itself was brilliant.
Yeah, that was really good.
You look at, even like the original Hellboy. The monster they're trying to keep out of this dimension is a giant tentacle beast floating in space.
Yeah. And
so, again, you don't get the same tone to it. You definitely get that feel that, Guillermo del Toro, we know where his head's at.
Yeah, I love Guillermo del Toro. That guy's one of my idols. I don't know. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's one of the greats.
Was that the same actor from Event Horizon? Was that the same guy from The Mouth of Madness? What's the name of that actor?
I haven't seen. Which one was what year was In the Mouth of Madness?
Mouth of Madness was 1994. And that to me was a very accurate Lovecraftian movie. I think probably the closest one, other than Event Horizon, really. Because it deals with a writer that's trying to bring all the monsters into our world. So he's trying to turn everybody insane. And in an insane world, the only insane people are the sane people, that they get turned. And so little by little, things start changing in the real world. And it's extremely interesting. Fictitious cities from Lovecraft, basically the name of the guy is Sutter Kane, I think, the name of the author, but Sutter Kane is pretty much H.P. Lovecraft, they kind of superimpose his name on real life H.P. Lovecraft, kind of, it's just an author that's kind of insane, and people become obsessed with his works, and everybody who reads his books starts seeing things that are not there. But Yeah.
I have seen that movie way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember seeing it as you were describing it. Because, yes, and again, that was a really well done movie, too.
And one of the favorite lines from that movie is suddenly the guy appears next to the main character in a bus and he says, "By the way, did I mention my favorite color was blue?" And then the guy opens his eyes and everything is in a blue hue. Everything that he's looking at is blue and he can't get rid of it and he starts freaking out and screaming. And then he wakes up. He was having like a nightmare. But the more frequent the nightmares become, the more apparent it feels like the real world is the world of the nightmare and not the world of when you wake up. Until basically you're stuck in the world of a nightmare and you don't really wake up. It's just you sink slowly into that kind of madness, and that's why it's called In the Mouth of Madness. You're there and then you're sinking into this world that's fictitious, but then the fictitious world becomes a real world, and that's it kind of turns the world on its head. And it's pretty. I highly recommend that movie, In the Mouth of Madness, 1994. Yeah.
And if we're talking.
Sam
favorite.
Neill, I think, is the name of the actor. Sam Neill.
It was Sam Neill. Yes.
Okay.
As soon as you said that, it was Sam Neill.
Okay.
But if we're talking, for my money, the best Lovecraftian film ever is John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Thing. Yep.
He took a campy sci-fi B-movie from like the 1950s that was in its own right a very good movie. It actually had a really wry sense of humor that wasn't really common at the time, but turned it into that. He actually had the cosmic horror, he had the loss of sanity, he had the visual effects that were just so spot on. It's a movie that to this day can still give me the creeps.
It is, and it deals with Lovecraftian topic specifically because Lovecraft, his monsters were extraterrestrials. But to clarify, they were not the Area 51 typical bobhead alien thing with the long fingers that people just always draw. They're more like there's these ancient ones in the universe outside in the darkness that could at any point in time destroy us, but that they regard us as so insignificant they don't even bother. Basically.
Right, they just don't take notice.
They don't take notice. But, however, there are some lesser ones who actually came here to this world a long time ago before there was even life on this planet or whatever, and they have been dormant under the ocean, waiting for people to reactivate them in a way. And that's why in the show notes I mentioned the movie Pacific Rim. Even though it's a mech movie about monsters and stuff like that, they are coming from the deep trench in the ocean, the Marianas Trench in the ocean, and that has somewhat of a Cthulhu origin, where it's not the Marianas Trench is not what Edgeworth referred to. He referred to kind of like what we know now as the Nemo Point, which is the point in the Pacific that's the farthest away from any landmass. And I talked to Ben Burns about this. The Nemo Point was not discovered until 1997, but in the Call of the Cthulhu short story, Lovecraft pinpointed those coordinates, and he puts those coordinates in his book. And it's not exactly on the Nemo Point, but it's not too far from it. And
wow.
At some points you say coincidence, it doesn't matter, whatever. I don't know. At some point I don't know how much you can go with coincidence. As to there's like why does this coincide with the Nemo Point? What's the deal with this? Kind of strange. But anyway, there's creatures coming out of the ocean because there's cultists that are praying to them with weird idols, and so they're giving them power, and they're rising from the ocean. And once they rise, they start turning everybody insane. I mean, Cthulhu was only out of the ocean maybe for a day or so, or a couple of days, and people were having nightmares all over the world, and cultists were having ceremonies and things were starting to go awry everywhere. And then he sank again, and then everything went back to normal. So that's why I called in the show notes like Pacific Rim, because it's a fun movie. I like it. Wasn't that Guillermo del Toro as well?
It was. And then you made a second one, which he should not have done.
I didn't see the second one. I'll watch it someday, but I don't think that it's got the way people talk about it doesn't have the same power as the first one. But
it's not as well. It's not as good a story. It's not as fun. And honestly, watching Scott Eastwood try and read a line is just it's painful. It is.
That's funny. But in essence, it's a portal, right? It's a portal that at the bottom of the ocean, there's some aliens that are trying to push these monsters into the earth to like take over it, right? I mean, is that
right to terraform?
So basically, in the way that there's portals here, Lovecraft pretty much, he believed in quantum mechanics. He believed in science over spirituality, actually, which is weird. Because the cult of demonology, or the cult of Satan that was started in the 60s in the States, was started because of Lovecraft, because they loved his works and they used him as inspiration. Yet, they didn't catch on to the fact that the guy did not believe in religion. The guy believed in science, and he believed that the universe was so immense that there were things out there that were real and they were coming to get us. At that point, you don't need the scary monsters from the Bible to scare you, because in his mind, there were real monsters out there that were coming to get us. And they were just traveling through different dimensions. In Call of the Cthulhu, he describes everything as being non-Euclidean geometry, like angles and things that we don't understand. So we're looking at things that our brains can't process because you can't see how they work. Like things are falling upwards in a way and then turning around corners that don't exist. In a way describing different dimensions that we are not privy to. And so these beings are not only from outer space, they're interdimensional beings in a way that, creates like portals to different worlds. So it's very interesting. And in the thing, obviously, the thing comes in a comet, right? Or in a meteorite or something?
Well, it's actually in the spaceship.
Oh, it's a spaceship?
Right, it's the spaceship that crashes and they thaw it out.
Okay, gotcha. And yeah, you don't know who's infected, and so they're all cutting themselves and testing their blood, right, to see which one is.
Correct.
Which
and then
one?
you use a defibrillator, and the guy's chest eats you.
Yep.
Like you do.
That, like you do normally. And then the other big thing that Lovecraft came up with is the Necronomicon.
Yes.
What?
A true staple of any good horror nowadays.
Yeah, and that brings us to the Evil Dead movies. And the first Evil Dead
all
came
good
out.
things do.
Yeah.
All good things in this world bring us to the Evil Dead movies.
To the Evil Dead movies. The first Evil Dead was that early 80s? The first Evil Dead? I mean, I'm talking about.
Look that one up, because a few years ago I read
1981, yeah. Early 80s.
Yeah, I read Bruce Campbell's autobiography, If Chins Could Kill.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole section where he talks about working on that film.
Oh yeah, I did read that book too. That was an awesome book. If Chins Could Kill, yeah, I remember.
It's brilliant, and just the love and attention, just the kind of campy good times that they were having, and they made just a terrific B movie, as was observed by Steep, your old buddy from college.
Hey, is this a B movie?
Well, Steep, there's a tree violating a woman, so yeah, I think this falls neatly into that category.
And then Campbell is saying in his book also how little money they made up for those movies. People always think, oh, well, he's really well off. And it's like, if you think about it, I'm doing like 3 jobs every single movie. I'm having to carry cameras and do all this crap because there's no extras. There's nobody to help them do this stuff. This is so low budget that he's got to do everything pretty much. And he was only getting paid like maybe $40,000, but if you think about it, that's $40,000 during like a span of like 4 or 5 years or something like that. It's like, I'm not making money. I have to find another job to make money. So.
For me, the part that kind of blew my mind was that the editing on that movie was done basically by the Coen brothers. They and Sam Raimi apparently go way, way back to film school together. So anytime you've got a Coen brothers film, Sam Raimi's got something going on there. And anytime you got a Sam Raimi movie, the Coens have got some little fingerprint on it. It's really fun.
That is pretty cool. I didn't realize I had gone to the same school. I'm just typing here to look them up a little bit. And then, let's see. Yeah, and then they're describing the Necronomicon, which is this volume that's like bound in flesh and written in blood. I'm not sure that's how Lovecraft described it though, but I guess they took some liberties with what this book was, basically. I don't know if Lovecraft may have been in the book that was used to call Cthulhu or something, or maybe it had some rites, or some instructions on how to perform cults, ceremonies.
Yes.
Stuff like that. And I think I was reading a book that Ethansito gave me that was like studying the effects of Lovecraft on true like witchcraft and people that consider themselves like real magicians or whatever, and saying how Lovecraft did draw a little bit from the witchcraft. I mean, specifically, he was born in Rhode Island. There's Massachusetts next to it, right? So, inferring in the way that all kind of you have a lot of cult of people, and it's actually a cult of people that are following Cthulhu, and I think it kind of borrowed from real life in the terms of all the witch covenants, which at some point, what's it Cotton Mather or whatever, was trying to prove that witches actually ran in covenants, and it wasn't just like isolated incidents. It was like a whole underground movement in Europe and in America, and that they spoke to each other, and that they formed like a whole society of witches and wizards or whatever. And so that's kind of where his cultist, portion comes in, because he's the cultists that are trying to call back Cthulhu and all that stuff. So I believe some of the major rites and rituals were written down in that book that he comes up with in Necronomicon. So.
Well, and speaking of Cotton Mather, just for my own edification, because I always have to teach, if I'm teaching 11th graders, I have to teach the book The Crucible.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been reading the Malleus Maleficorum, which is the book that these early witch hunters would use to identify witches and how to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really funny because most of it is just sort of the legalistic side of it. In fact, it actually tells why you have to try a witch in civil court rather than in a basically an Inquisition court. And that's actually, it's pretty crazy. But again, it's one of those things that Cotton Mather actually would have been using whenever he was doing it. And even it says that there has to be, where there's one, there's probably more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. This is coming from somewhere. This is not an isolated incident.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying they didn't burn a bunch of innocent people, but I'm thinking that there must have been a grain of truth in there somewhere.
Well, and the thing is, first of all, in America, we didn't burn anybody. We hanged them all.
You hung them, that right. There was no witch burning. That's a
we were more civilized about it.
Yeah.
But no, and it again, it just delves into that whole paranoia of the other, that there's something out there trying to get at us, and we're either not important enough for it to know about, and it's just going to step on us like we step on ants, or it, even worse, it knows we're there, and it's kind of waiting for us to mess up so that we can, it can use us to do horrible things.
Yeah. And it can take over, almost like a possession thing.
Right. So if you've got that kind of mentality already built in, it's what Lovecraft was horrified about. It was the other. It was this something out there that wants in here.
And in the Call of the Cthulhu role-playing game that is expressed by different characters have different sanity attributes. Some have more sanity than others. Therefore, some are more strong-minded than others. And the premise is people that are weaker, who had weaker minds, are more susceptible to a kind of suggestion, I guess. And that at some point they could be pushed over the precipice a little bit easier than other people. And that it was, in theory, the people that were the strong-minded people that joined together to try to stop the coming of Cthulhu. But in reality, the party is composed of both weak-willed and strong-willed people. And it could happen that you have one weak-willed person in the group that gets taken over, that person suddenly becomes a cultist and he starts murdering the rest of the party, right? So you have to worry about that weak link whenever you're running around the world trying to solve mysteries.
Well, I've never played that RPG, and it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun, because I do like that aspect of, now you're a bad guy.
Well, I don't consider myself an expert in any Cthulhu or Lovecraft. I'm studying right now on it. That's why I've been reading so much about it lately, but I'm reading a lot because I'm planning to do the first adventure in Halloween this year. And that's how long it's going to take me to really brush up on the 20s and read some more of his short stories. Specifically, I think The Hound is where the Necronomicon maybe first appeared. I'm not sure. I think that short story is important. So I need to read that, and I need to get more familiar with his writing, so I can, in D&D I always felt comfortable running adventures, because that's been my life since I was little. But H.P. Lovecraft in the 20s in the States is not my forte. But I find it very interesting. So I do want to study up on both American culture and Lovecraft to deliver a nice performance as a dungeon master or as a game master, you know.
So here's what you do: you just read The Great Gatsby. Every time Tom Buchanan is mentioned, just pick an octopus for a head. And then you're good. You've got it all right there.
Okay. Well, I did read that book more than once, and actually, I do like The Great Gatsby a lot. It's
a fantastic read. I really
awesome.
enjoyed it.
But let's talk about a sensitive character that probably was influenced at some point by the Cthulhu mythos, and that is Slender Man. And people may be rolling their eyes right now, saying, "Oh no, not Slender Man, whatever. That's so cheesy."
I've got 2 kids. One of them's 9. One of them's 7.
Mm-hmm.
They're in grade school, so of course I have heard so much about Slender Man. And the only thing that I'm really happy about is that my son, sensitive little spirit that he is, he didn't like that Slender Man didn't have a face. So every time he draws him with like the suit and the tentacles and everything, gives him a big happy face. He's clearly doing what he wants, and that's walking around outside talking to people. He's probably pretty happy.
Yep, he's just a happy dude. But I mean, from researching a while back, Adriana and I went to see the latest Slenderman movie, which got trashed by both audiences and critics.
Not surprising.
But in a way, I actually was not unhappy with it. I may be in the minority, but I was looking at it from a different point of view, because it is very much written like a Lovecraftian movie in the way that there's like the kids are becoming insane little by little whenever they have exposure to the Slender Man. And I'm like, dude, this is straight up Lovecraftian. This is awesome. But maybe because I have that background of kind of understanding Lovecraft a little bit more than the average person. But that's what pulled me in. You know, critics hated it. Other people, the regular people, thought it was boring, and the movie didn't really move. I thought it was perfect. I thought the pacing of the movie was perfect. It was slow, and little by little the kids were sinking into this thing where they started seeing him, and oh crap. And once you see him, then you start going down this little slide into madness, and I thought that was interesting. But then I started researching him a little bit, and I guess every culture kind of has a version of Slender Man, and also the American, the American Indians, or the Aborigines here in the States, in what is later to be called the United States. They had a version of Slender Man. Even Josh Whedon put a version of Slender Man in one of his episodes of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it was that episode that you have those slender people like smiling the whole time, and they take away everybody's voice or something. It was a freaky ass episode, man. That was one of my favorite episodes of Buffy. It was it was cool. There's also been like sightings of Slenderman in England, and there's a legend of the Slenderman in England too, and stuff like that. But I think that's kind of like a very Lovecraftian thing. It's a very Lovecraftian monster in the way that it comes and it kind of seduces you, and the danger is not apparent right away. You just see something that kind of freaks you out a little bit, and you don't fully understand what it is, and you never do. And that's what drives people so insane. You never understand. And then as I was researching more, I realized in 2013, 2014, there was that incident with the girls that they tried to kill this other girl. I don't remember exactly what.
They did kill her.
Oh, they did kill her?
Yes.
I thought it was just attempted. I didn't realize it was successful or whatever.
No, they actually succeeded.
Oh, wow.
And so one of them is, if I remember correctly, one of them's in prison or juvie. She's going to spend a lot of time in there, and the other one is basically sentenced to mental health facility.
Yeah. But that's a scary part about Lovecraft's writing, that it's something that, people do go insane in real life. And he was going insane in real life. His father went insane in real life. And I think his mother too at some point. So it is scary, I guess, for anybody who's got any family that's kind of borderline insane, or have some kind of mental disorder. That's really scary in real life, even without the monsters or anything. That's got to be pretty scary.
Well, we are creatures of our chemistry, and it's a very real thing. Right after college, I spent 3 years as the director of operations at a mental health facility. And most of the people there were taking their meds and were being, stand-up citizens. They were doing the best they could with a bad draw. But every so often, one of them would just completely go off the rails. And it was weird because it did have a very other-earthly feeling.
Yeah.
To have somebody, who's actively hallucinating, who's actively, seeing things, chasing after you with a piece of closet doweling. And it doesn't matter. You can't really talk them down at that point because while you can calm them a little bit, they're still seeing, the things from the other dimensions flying around their head. They're still hearing the voices.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty unsettling experience.
I can imagine. I mean, I did, growing up in Colombia, sometimes I would run into insane people on the streets. And when you're a kid walking alone or walking from the bus stop and you run into insane people, like, they're insane and they're aggressive. It's an extremely scary experience to meet somebody that has no boundaries.
Yeah.
That at any point, in any second, they may decide that it might be fun to kill you. And you're like, oh shit,
or that's the thing that's going to set the scales right in their head somehow.
Exactly. It's just like, wow. It is a very scary, because with regular people, you can talk them down, or you can, like you were saying, you can talk regular people down. But when somebody that's that far gone, you just got to brace for impact. I don't know what else to, you just hope for the best. Brace for impact, hope for the best, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, let's switch to the more cheery movie, The Faculty. I don't know if you saw The Faculty back in with
one of my very favorite Elijah Wood movies.
One of the few movies with Jon Stewart was a main character, right? Or not necessarily main character, but he was one of the. Because Jon Stewart normally just does his talk show, or did his talk show. He wasn't in a lot of movies other than like maybe Men in Tights and The Faculty, right? And a couple of others.
Yes,
Big Daddy,
and the
I think.
fact that he played that completely straight. He wasn't playing the funny guy. He was just this science professor that was looking at this strange tentacle fish thing that these kids had found.
Yeah. And let's see, this movie was 1998. And I actually love this movie. I rewatch this movie once every couple of years because I just like it. I think it's awesome. It's just funny and scary at the same time. And I don't know, the whole high school thing, kind of like the Stranger Things when you have a bunch of kids in school and they figure out that everybody else is really weird and something bad is happening and they're the only ones that can stop it. I don't know, I kind of find that interesting, that kind of premise.
Well, because if you think about high school, from a psychological standpoint, it is. Because
everybody else is a douchebag,
right? Right, you fall into like your little clique and you're looking at everybody else and these people are all nuts. They're going to destroy the world.
Yep. Pretty much. Either that or end up working at the car wash.
Well, yeah, and then you can't go there anymore.
Yeah, you can't go there anymore. So The Faculty was very much, in a sense, a Lovecraftian movie in the sense that it was an extraterrestrial that came down to Earth in disguise and was starting to infect humans, right?
Right.
With this little leeches like Night of the Creeps. I don't know if Night of the Creeps would qualify also as a Lovecraftian movie. I don't know if you agree with that or not. We have this little slugs taking over people and things like that. But
again, for my money, if it's gonna be classified as a true Lovecraftian film, there has to be an element of paranoia involved as well. And with The Faculty, you definitely got that.
And tentacles.
And tentacles that came out of their face when it rained.
And also when the little girl goes into the swimming pool and she turns into this huge beast, and you can definitely see tentacles there. Like when she gets out of the pool, I could swear there's tentacles like behind her.
Oof. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That is a freaky scene. So. So yeah, The Faculty, that's another one. And I think in most modern horror and stuff like that, here and there, there's a spring. Talking about what's his face from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Josh Whedon. Didn't he do that Cabin in the Woods movie?
He did. He was part of the production staff on that one.
And that's pretty much Cthulhu on the other side waiting to come out.
It is, and I love that it's not only kind of a loving homage to that Cthulhu mythos, but it's also a complete takedown of absolutely every horror movie ever.
Yeah, it is.
My wife is not a horror movie fan. It takes something. My wife has a very specific range of movies that she likes, and it takes something very specific outside of her normal comfort zone to get her to watch it. She really liked that movie. She's never a horror movie fan, but the fact that you could kind of go through and you had that the sense of humor that went along with it.
They make fun of all the tropes. They have a werewolf in a
every time
glass
we would
cage.
watch it. Right, every time you watch it, we have to pause and like look at the board of all the monsters that that they could free, and the fact that there's witches, and then right under that, sexy witches,
And then hillbillies.
cannibal hillbillies.
Yeah.
Oh, and Kevin. We don't know what that is, but Kevin is up on the board as well.
Okay. Maybe I don't want to find out what Kevin can do.
I don't. I could see mer people being way more fun than dealing with Kevin.
Oh yeah, that's funny that guy got killed by mer people because he always wanted to use them in one of the scenarios. So that was really funny.
It was a lot of fun. I really, really appreciated that movie.
And then mummies are always kind of funny until they actually try to attack you and kill you.
Right.
Then they kind of become freaky. And so there you get to see like them crossing over from the fun side into the like, oh shit, we're gonna die.
Right.
We're gonna die in a very painful way.
Unless you're Tom Cruise, and then you're just like, why would you even bother? Oh, she has 4 eyes. That's a medical condition. I don't know why that's scary. Doesn't speak English. Well, definitely to blow that up.
That's a medical condition, yeah. So, well, at this point, I guess we make a pause, because at this point we're going to insert the interview with Ben Burns.
Okay.
I believe he's lead designer at Comet Games. Actually, I believe Comet Games is his company. New. It's not Comet Games, it's New Comet Games. And he's a lead designer, and I believe he owns the company as well. So, following is his interview. Well, I guess we can get started. I don't want to, waste too much of your time, and I just have a set of questions about the Cthulhu mythos. Since I bought your book, I've been reading the instructions for the core manual for Call of the Cthulhu game. Yeah. And I pretty much read everything page by page. I'm all the way up to chases right now.
Oh wow!
I wanted, because it's a new system, I want to really understand it well. When I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of times I wouldn't read everything. I would just skip around. So I started with like 2nd edition AD&D, and a lot of times I just started making up stuff because I didn't really know what I was doing because I didn't read everything. So now that I'm an adult and I have more discipline, I guess. I like to read everything. Plus I find it enjoyable. I don't know. I do like the way the book is written.
It's a good book.
I haven't delved too much into the book that you wrote yet because I don't want to spoil myself right now, and I want to really learn how the mechanics work before I start trying to run an adventure. I'm thinking of having some friends over for Halloween this year to run like the first adventure in your book. So
sweet.
So
now I'm not an expert. I mean, I consider myself pretty good with the rules, but I didn't write them. So.
Oh well, I don't know much about the rules, so I mean, all you have to do is know a little bit more than I do. No, but I'm not here to quiz you about rules or anything. I'm more interested in your writing and how you got to be in this spot in your life. So maybe I should just start with the first question in my notes here, which is, can you give us a little background on your life? Well, first of all, your name and a background on your life with respect of how you got interested in gaming overall.
Okay, well, I'm Ben Burns, and I started gaming when I was probably about 4 years old. So I've been gaming my whole life.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I had 2 older brothers, and they were a couple of years older than me, so I couldn't, compete with them with, sports and stuff like that. But I could beat them when it came to board games, and that's where I learned a true love for board games, and then got into role-playing games. Is the first time I heard about Dungeons and Dragons, and I was in high school. I just fell in love with it before I even knew what it was. Just hearing about it. So I was like, so that's where I got started into it, and I started DMing. Probably I'd only been playing about 2 or 3 months, and the other players didn't like our current DM, so they kind of threw me into it. So it was.
I'm assuming that was 1st edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or I guess just,
AD&D 1st edition. So They bought a module for me and said, "Here, you're DMing in 30 minutes," and that's how my DMing started. So, and I've been doing it ever since. I love it so much more behind the screen than in front of the screen, and and I run a lot of different game systems now, and to me, the rules, while I always try to stick to the rules and play by them, to me, they're secondary to the storytelling and the interaction with the other players. So,
yes, I think I would agree with that. Being a DM for a while too, I got to that conclusion as well. I found that when I was trying to be a stiffler about the rules, players started losing interest in the game. It was almost like it was the game against them, and not so much what's happening in the story, right?
Yeah, I you got to get the mood going. You got to get the players into it, And as a DM, I prefer to lose. I like seeing my players, cheering and jumping up and down and high fiving,
Yeah.
But by the same token, I don't pull punches. If somebody dies, somebody's gonna die, and that's just part of the game. And I think them knowing that helps the game, because then there's a sense of fear there that, my gosh, he'll actually kill my character if I don't do this right,
Yeah, I think that's a sense of immersion, right?
Yeah, and I think that helps.
Okay, and with respect to like comparing like Dungeons and Dragons to Cthulhu, because I've never played Cthulhu, but from what I hear, it's easier for your character to die in Cthulhu, so I guess that even heightens it more, would you say?
Well, I don't know if it's easier to die. If you don't know what you're doing, it's definitely easier to die. It really depends on the DM. I've run D&D games with DMs that will kill your characters, pretty easily. But Cthulhu, you can't really. It's like comparing apples and oranges. It's a completely different style of game. If you're fighting the monster and you don't know already how to beat it, you're probably going to die.
Okay. So you have to do your homework.
Yeah, it's a lot more about investigation and trying to figure out what's going on, and there's a reason library use is one of the biggest skills used in Call of Cthulhu. Your characters a lot of times spend time at the library, trying to figure out what the heck they're looking at, or trying to put pieces of puzzles together to figure out how to move forward in whatever they're doing. When you come face to face with the mythos, usually at the end, at that point, like I said, if you don't already know how to beat it, chances are your pistol or your shotgun or whatever you're carrying is going to do very little to what you're dealing with. Okay, so there's usually other ways to defeat things besides just straight shooting. Okay, I mean, sometimes that works, but most of the time not. So anyway, that's that's my take on it. So it's a lot more of the investigation, a lot more of the immersion and trying to find the mythos, and in addition you have sanity to deal with. In D&D, about the only mental thing that ever comes into play is you have to make a fear test, right? Well, in Call of Cthulhu, every time you see anything that's abnormal, or as you learn about stuff, your characters take sanity checks, and your sanity goes down over the course of the game. So if you started with 70 sanity points and you lose a couple, now your sanity's at 68, and then you're trying to beat that score, and then it's 65, and then it's 60, and it keeps going down and down during the game. It's kind of like hit points that you don't get back generally until the game's over. And if you lose too many points at one time, your character can go insane and do all sorts of stuff. And if you lose too many overall, then you can go insane that way as well. And a lot of times more characters go insane than they do die. And that actually fits more with the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, which is what everything's based on to begin with, right? In his stories, if you read his actual books, his heroes usually end up going insane or dying in the books. And the game kind of mimics that in a way. So anyway, that's It's rare to have characters last more than 2 or 3 or 4 adventures without either going completely insane or dying. So,
if your character goes completely insane, does that mean that they become an unplayer character at that point? Do you lose them?
Well, there is ways to improve their sanity to get them back into the game, but usually requires time out. Going to an insane asylum for a little while, or getting some serious psychotherapy and stuff like that. And that can be done in the game, like between adventures and stuff like that. But it's usually a time lapse type thing, not oh well, here, let me throw a spell on you and you're patched up, back, ready to go again.
Okay. So does that mean it's good for a person to have maybe a couple of characters so they can play one while the other one is recuperating? Is that something that's done?
Yeah, that's done a lot. I don't actually run a regular campaign, and so I do mostly one-offs here and there. At conventions. I don't have a regular group that wants to play Call of Cthulhu. We actually play D&D on a regular basis. So, but I love the game, and it's Call of Cthulhu is great for doing one-offs. And then I have had players who carry from one game to the next game, and they bring in the same character, or they have he's off to the insane asylum, so I'm going to bring in a new character.
Yeah.
That's not unusual at all. So
okay, cool. Well, you mentioned H.P. Lovecraft, and at what point did you discover him, and what drew you into his writing, or to writings that have been influenced by him?
Really, the first time I even heard of H.P. Lovecraft was when I opened up the Deities and Demigods first edition, and it had the Cthulhu mythos in there, and I was like, I never even heard of this before, and it just the images that Earl Otis drew in there just sucked me in, and when I was in the Navy for a while, and you get a lot of downtime, so I did a lot of reading, and I read just about everything I could get my hands on, and H.P. Lovecraft was one of those. So
that's interesting that you were reading him while you were in the Navy, because Cthulhu lives under the sea, right? I mean, was that something that made you kind of nervous at night when you were like in the middle of the ocean somewhere, wondering what you're reading?
I actually would once in a while just like, come on, just give me a sign here, buddy. Hop on up here. They're supposed to be down in the South Pacific. I never went down that way.
Okay, yeah. Well, talking about the South Pacific, because I recently read the Call of Cthulhu short story, and he gives specific coordinates to where the island, how do you pronounce it, R'lyeh or something like that? R'lyeh?
Yeah, R'lyeh. R'lyeh is how I pronounce it.
Okay, he gave specific coordinates to where this point is. And then I googled that, and then I found out that there's a point called a Nemo Point, which is not too far from there. And from researching a little bit more, the Nemo Point is the farthest point in the ocean away from any landmass, island or continental piece of land. And from what I researched even farther, the Nemo Point was not established or calculated until 1997 or so. And so I'm wondering how the heck Lovecraft was able to pinpoint such a place with the methods and means of the time. I don't know. To me, that's kind of weird. I don't, Well,
there were maps and charts that had, the latitudes and longitudes. So we probably just looked at the map and said, okay, what's the biggest, furthest from any land, and went there. So that would be my guess. I'm not sure. So
because to me, his writings are a curiosity. And I started, reading his biography and figuring out that he was not really he didn't believe in the supernatural as much as he believed in actual science and quantum mechanics. Is that right?
To be honest, I don't know. I've read a little bit about him, but he was a very strange individual.
Yeah.
His eating habits and stuff like that, and basically he starved himself to death.
Oh, he did.
But he said he died of malnutrition. Was one thing I've read, but no, I just I haven't gotten into much of his beliefs and stuff like that.
Okay.
I know he was a racist, but that's
what I've heard.
But then again, this was the 20s, and there were a lot of people who were like that in the 20s.
Just about every other person was pretty racist back then, I imagine. I don't know. That was just a way of life, I imagine. I
Yeah,
don't know.
so-
Yeah.
Anyway, but I don't worry too much about the person. It's more about the
About
the writing.
Mhm.
And actually, I find some of his novels very difficult to read. They get a little wordy. So I prefer more of his short stories and stuff like that, and I love the synopsis of his other stories and how they all come together. But his actual writing of like reading Mountains of Madness can drive someone insane. But I love the story. It's just tough to read. So sometimes.
Yeah. His stories are very intriguing, and they kind of grab you little by little, like gradually, and then before you know it, you're kind of invested in the character.
Oh yeah.
Because it's almost like you're looking through the eyes of the character.
Oh yeah.
And his stories are written from a point of view where you're just telling something that happened. It's not a question of whether it's fiction or not. Obviously, it's fiction, but that never comes into account. The story happened. It's somebody telling something that happened to them in a very personal way that draws you in and makes you think, "Oh, this probably really happened." I mean, I know it didn't really happen, but it's a good immersion, I guess, technique or tool that he uses.
Oh yeah, and I love how he gives specific days and years of this happened and this happened, and one of the things I love that it's written in the 20s,
Yeah.
and some people make fun of the fact that Cthulhu was killed with a steamboat, right?
Yeah.
And but I heard Sandy Peterson talking about this. He's the one who wrote the game Call of Cthulhu. And he was saying, you have to remember, though, in the 20s, the steamboat was like the peak of technology. That was the strongest thing we had at the time. Yeah. And that only injured him. You know what I'm saying? And that was the best man could do against him. That was the best we could hope for at the time.
Yeah.
He was saying if he wrote it today, we'd drop a nuke bomb on him. He
exactly.
said it's kind of the equivalent, right? So of the time period, and you have to think of it in those terms. So anyway, which I thought was an interesting perspective. So
the other thing I thought was interesting about his life is that he was a little bit insane, right?
Oh yeah,
from what I hear. And that he had vivid dreams.
Yes.
And in the Call of the Cthulhu short story, it delves into this when the island Rylech surfaces. Spoilers for whoever hasn't read this, but the people start having synchronized nightmares, you could say, around the world, right?
Right.
And so that's something that is interesting because, I don't know if you ever had like vivid dreams. I've had vivid dreams. But,
yes.
But you kind of impose yourself into his story, so you start believing this stuff as if it were happening to you almost. Yeah. Like when you wake up at night and you're in a cold sweat and you could have sworn that what you just dreamt was something real,
Yeah, I think it's very possible. There's a lot that we don't understand in life. And to assume we understand everything is fooling ourselves,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, from that point of view, I was reading that he was not so much spiritual as he was scientific, where he believed that extraterrestrials, obviously all these old ones and ancient ones, come from outside of the Earth, right? But they live somewhere else in the universe, right? But they...
yes, and some in different dimensions, but
in different dimensions.
Some in other planets and stuff. He had some living on Pluto, and some live, further out, and some in space and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
And I'm not saying I believe in alien abductions, but I can't disprove them either. But a lot of the people a lot of the stories, and there's some stories in Shreveport, not too far from where we are, Shreveport, Louisiana, where people have this described being abducted, like the wall disappears and they float. It kind of ties to what Lovecraft is saying, or what you're saying about interdimensional beings. Something that takes you into a different dimension, and also the way that he describes things in non-Euclidean geometry, Lovecraft, and he makes allusions to non-Euclidean geometry all the time because it's angles and things that could not possibly exist in our dimension, and things that we can't understand.
Right.
When we look at them, and I guess that's part of what makes us insane, is that we are looking at something and we can't figure out how it's doing what it's doing.
Yes. And then there's also this idea that Lovecraft put into a lot of his books, is that we don't understand the vastness of the universe and everything else that's out there and how insignificantly small we are, right? And in the 1920s, you have to always kind of go back to that perspective. Is that we were the center of the universe, right? I mean, we weren't that many years from believing the sun rotated around us, right? Anyway, for us to peel back these layers and to see how insignificant we are and the vastness of everything else that's out there, that is what would drive people insane also. So,
but even with our understanding right now, I mean, what does it do to your understanding of religion when if you find out that there's extraterrestrials for real and that maybe we are not the center of our universe and maybe they worship different things that are way above our understanding? And what does that do for somebody's belief system? I mean, does that destroy a person from the inside out? I mean, what?
Well, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And to me, it doesn't change anything. So
okay, well that's refreshing, or at least that's reassuring at a certain point that you wouldn't go automatically insane. I don't see a reason why, and I hope I'm correct in believing in God, but I don't see why God couldn't create Earth here and put man on it and create another planet over here and put a different species on it. Yeah, and create a universe. I mean, I believe in God in the same way that you believe in God, in that sense that, maybe somebody, I don't know, to me it's kind of impossible of a universe like this existing without something creating it. Yet Lovecraft believes, as many of the scientists or physicists, astronomers, not astrologists, the astronomers believe that nothing can be created from. I mean, that something can actually be created from nothing, which is what Lovecraft seemed to believe. And there's this sense of discovering. I mean, that was way before antimatter was discovered, or dark matter, or however you call it. And so now that they're dealing with dark matter, some of the physicists are saying, something can come out of nothing. And I'm like saying, but my brain does not compute that. Even in a physical sense, it is just as impossible for that to happen as it is for there to be a God and create things. They're both incredible to me. There being a God that creates everything, and there not being a God. They're both just as insane. But one of them has to be true, right? Or maybe both at a certain level. I don't know. Anyway, it's
I don't want to get.
I don't know if we want to get into theology, but anyway.
Theology. I'm not a big theology guy.
But this is what Lovecraft kind of makes me think about sometimes when I'm reading his stuff.
Yeah, I understand. I actually hope there's other life out there, that we're not alone in the universe. But that's kind of me. So
it's for philosophers who let them have it. So I guess now let's talk about the 20s era, because I find, for me personally, I was born in Colombia and I'm not as familiar with the culture. I mean, I've studied history. I've studied American history. I became naturalized citizen back in 2000, and
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I still feel like I have a big slice missing from my American history, because I've never been to the East Coast. I've never been to New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Massachusetts. I've never been into that area, and I think he was born in Rhode Island, right, or somewhere around there.
Yes.
And so to me, I need like maybe some tips on how to immerse myself in the 20s era, so I can be a little bit more confident about running a scenario for them in this era. Do you have any tips for me on that?
Well, Wikipedia is a great resource.
Okay.
Actually, I've been to New York, and I lived in upstate New York for a while, but I've never, and I think I've been to Massachusetts once, but I've never been to that area a lot, right? And of course, if you go now, it's different than it was in the 20s. Yeah. But if you think about the 20s in the U.S., this was in the Roaring 20s before the stock market crashed, post World War I, and America was at the height of its. It wasn't post World War II where we were the dominant in the world. At this point, Great Britain is still the dominant force in the world, but it's I'm not. I don't know how to say it. I'm not sure exactly how immersed you need to get into it. You know, you got to think about prohibition is going on, and so you have speakeasies going around, and you know the cops are kind of doing their own thing, and of course you have the whole racial relationship stuff.
Yeah, I did see that show called Boardwalk Empire, that HBO show, and I really loved it a lot. I kind of fell in love with that kind of era. And would you say that the U.S. had like a case of like, I guess it was a good time for the country, right? Like the self-confidence of the country had just been asserted. Like, you know, the U.S. overcame its civil war, right? It unified. Then we had this war in Europe, which didn't really involve the U.S. directly, but it was just a mess in Europe. All countries fighting against each other for God knows what. Somebody assassinated a bishop, and then you end up fighting against each other. So, in a way, the U.S. was just kind of helping. They weren't directly involved. Is that right?
Oh, the U.S. actually sent a lot of troops over there, and a lot of troops died. Yeah, and they were fighting in France, and you know, all over. But yeah, that's it. Not as involved as we got when we were in World War II.
Yeah.
But it was enough, and a lot of soldiers saw a lot of action over there. So, you know, a lot of times when I'm running the games, a lot of the players are, you know, veterans from World War One who saw too much. You know,
wow.
And it's not uncommon for us to push into the game that the Germans used. You know, mythos creatures on their side to help them out, right? And that's why they did as well as they did against everybody else, you know. So it's, but yeah, it was a fun time. It was a free time where women were really starting to show they were liberated and didn't have to stay at home. You know, because that was really the first time women entered the workforce was in World War One, when a lot of the men, you know, joined the military and went overseas. Okay. So, you know, again, World War II, it was a bigger time, but World War One was like a step in that direction, and to them, it was the war to end all wars. Yeah, and we won, and so you know, let's party, and they did a lot. So.
But that mentality of let's party, there's such a juxtaposition of, okay, we're extremely liberal in that area, right? In that era. At the same time, alcohol is illegal. How does that compute? I mean, this is like the eye-opening era of the country. And then you're keeping them from celebrating? How does that work?
Well, I think they celebrated a bit too much. And then, like I said, women for the first time had a real voice, and they made it be heard, and they were the big proponents of the oh geez, mine just went blank. Sorry, prohibition and you know, banning the alcohol, and so you know they got it pushed through, and which really it kind of surprises me when I look back through history that happened. But, you know, they managed to get it done, and then it didn't take long for everybody to realize what a mistake it was. But but what it did was it just kind of made it a little more dangerous to do that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? It still happened everywhere. There were speakeasies all over the place. There was, you know, illegal, you know, alcohol being smuggled in from everywhere, from Canada to Puerto Rico to people making it themselves, and it was you know, it was a wild time, like I said. So, you know, this is when the Tommy guns were going around, and you had the gangsters, and it was an interesting time, dangerous, I would say, you know, to live in, but and the government was just kind of feeling its power for the first time, right? And so you have the FBI going around trying to control things, and so it really opens it up for the storytelling, because you never know what's going to happen. You know, there could be some military, you know, secret military experimentation going on, and things of this nature, and it really opens up the whole world to you for doing this that kind of thing. So
that period of time is really interesting to me from that point of view. In a way, I think that, I don't know if I'm wrong in assuming this, but I get the feeling that the 20s were actually a more liberal time for the country than the 50s were. You know,
I think so.
which
Well,
is
definitely
strange
more
to
than
me.
the 50s.
Yeah.
And then in the, but you know, like most things run in cycles, you
Mhm.
know, and ebbs and flows. So it was more liberal in the 20s, then it got very conservative in the 30s and 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
and then the 60s and 70s it went back to being liberal again, and
Yeah.
then, you know, 80s was conservative, and it just kind of goes back and forth. So that's not uncommon.
Okay. Just checking, because I think of when time moves forward, you get more liberal, but that's not always the case. I mean, if we think of the French Revolution, that's one of the most liberal times in history, right?
Oh yeah,
That was like,
yeah.
was that 1789 or?
Oh,
is that
I don't know. I'm
something
not
like
a history major.
I think it was 1789 when the French Revolution happened. But that's when people said the hell with religion.
Yeah.
It's one of the most Catholic countries in the world, said the hell with religion. and now you look back at France, and there's plenty of people that are still diehard Catholics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So-
but they're actually getting more conservative right now. But yeah, 1789 to 1799, it was a 10-year span. So,
Yeah.
Captain Google to the rescue
Okay.
there.
All right. Perfect. Awesome. So let me.
I mean-
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's what's great about writing Cthulhu books at this time,
Mhm.
is because there's so much information on the computers, on your, that you can go search and find. I joined Facebook groups for Bridgewater, Massachusetts, while I was writing this book.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Okay, and in one of the stories, and I don't give away too much here, but because you have the Devil Swamp, right? Is that the
Yes,
one?
I had the Devil's Swamp.
Okay. In one of them, one of the places on there is the Comfort Bridge
Mm-hmm.
and the Solitude Stone. And so I actually got a chance to chat with the mom of the Eagle Scout who took the Solitude Stone and made a park out of it.
Oh, really?
I mean, yeah, it's
Wow, that's wild.
it's fascinating that you can do that, and that's
Mhm.
not something you could have even done 10 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
that it's great stuff. So anyway, I encourage everybody who's sometimes I'll run modern day settings for Call of Cthulhu, and I'm like, yeah, you got a cell phone, use it, man.
Yeah, use everything you can to your advantage.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's but that's I've also played Call of Cthulhu in the future, like out in space
Uh-huh.
and back in the Roman times, and that's what's great about Call of Cthulhu. You can run it in any time period.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
talking about the 1920s, and that's the apex of the game, but that's not what it's limited to. There's so many places you can run it. So
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen that movie Event Horizon, and also the Cloverfield movies, which the third one kind of alludes to that kind of space kind of horror too, and also video games like Dead Space and things like that are based
oh yeah.
on kind of Cthulhian mythos things. Apparently, there's a lot of stuff that's tied to the Cthulhu mythos.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times they don't even necessarily, state it right out that this
Mhm.
is Cthulhu mythos. But I've seen a lot, tons of movies and books I've read that I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely very Cthulhu-ish. So, but I think anytime you get into the strange or supernatural, you start walking down that. As long as it's not just a straight,
Yeah.
vampire, werewolf, ghost type story,
Mhm.
then you start treading into that area where H.P. Lovecraft made his living.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Let me ask you about your writing. Were you always a writer? Did you always enjoy?
No, actually. So I created most of my own stuff when I was running D&D,
Mm-hmm.
and I've actually only recently gotten into running Call of Cthulhu,
Uh-huh.
probably in the last 10 years.
Okay.
So, but I always wrote all my D&D stuff, and then kind of got out of doing role playing completely. But I took some of my older modules and I just put them together as a little book and sold them on eBay. And these were just sheets of paper folded in half, stapled. I mean, they were very, very low quality, you
Uh-huh.
might say. And someone, I had people buy them, and
Mhm.
one of the people who bought it was a man by the name of Doug Ray, who runs the North Texas RPG Con up here in Dallas.
Okay.
So he tracks me down and emails me and says, "Hey, listen, I'm starting this convention. Why don't you come run your module?" I bought it and I think it's great.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I already had something planned for that weekend that he had scheduled, and I told him I couldn't do it. And he said, "Well, maybe next year." And I was like, yeah, sure. Anyway, so he calls me the next year and says, "Why don't you come run your game at my convention?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I haven't really played D&D in years. He's like, "Yeah, but it's like riding a bike, just run first edition like you always did." And so I said, okay. And so I show up and I run it, and everybody loves it. And then that kind of got me into, back into the role-playing spirit. And I started, everybody was running D&D. And so I was trying to give people other options. And so I, stumbled on Call of Cthulhu. Of course, I knew about it and I'd read his books and stuff. I'd heard there was a game, but I hadn't really gotten into it. So I found the 6th edition rule book. It just come out, and so I got it and ran some of the adventures that were in the back of the book of that, and then started writing my own from there. And it's just taken off, and I've done very well with with Call of Cthulhu. I contacted Chaosium and told them I wanted to do a book, and they were all for it. So, it's...
So how does that work? Are you working under the banner? When you said you called Chaosium, are you contract for them or what?
Yeah, so I have a license with them. That's why, it has a logo on the front of the book saying Chaosium, so it's licensed through them. So they have to approve everything I put out for that, and then they keep it and archive it so they can use it, if they want to later on. But because some of my books, I have actually created new mythos and new things in the books. And so that's, matter of fact, I think I created 2 new gods in your Devil Swamp book. So, they add stuff to every time people write stuff. It's just adding more and more to the mythos. So,
okay. Yeah, and I think that's how
ever
school
growing universe. It's great. So,
yeah,
I love it.
I think that's awesome. And tell me a little bit about New Comet Games. Is that your company, or do you work for them, or how's that relationship?
It's my company. I founded them. So when I started getting serious about doing Kickstarters, some friends of mine had done a Kickstarter or 2, and it was going great. And so what actually happened was I didn't start with role-playing games in my company. What I did was I run a Boy Scout troop also, and and one of the merit badges you can work on now is one called game design. And so as a troop, we were working on this, and I told all the boys, I said, "You're not doing a computer game. Everybody's going to make, a card game, or a miniatures game, or a board game." And they said, "Okay, great. We will if you will." And I said, okay. So I made a game called Ultimate Dinosaur Fighting.
That sounds pretty cool.
It's a tactical battle game using dinosaurs as miniatures, and in a battle arena set in the future. So you have mutations and tech upgrades and things like that. And so I kind of did this up and brought it to a convention, and people played it and everybody loved it, and everybody's telling me, "You got to kickstart this, you got to kickstart it." So I did, and it was successful right from the get-go. And from there, then I started, everybody's saying, "Well, now you got to produce your modules and put them out there." And so I've started doing that, and it's just exploded from there, and we're having a great time. So
is your dinosaur game available for sale at your site at New Comet Games?
Well, actually, as it turns out, we sold out
of
the game.
Oh, okay.
Of the first run. And we're working on a second edition, which will be launching in about 2 months. So,
okay.
And it's all new artwork, and it comes with an expansion and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's going to be great, and we're really looking forward to it. We think it's going to do great. So.
Okay, and would you like to tell us the name of your website so people can go look at it?
Oh, yeah. Well, right now I don't have any information on it, but you can go to my website. It's newcometgames.com. and we have a store there that sells all of our stuff. So we have everything from D&D and Call of Cthulhu to the new Top Secret. I don't know if you've heard of that one or not.
I think we talked a little bit about that. I was kind of interested in that.
When you hear the monster growl, you know it's
because
time
that's
for
modern day
Monster Trap.
spy. Like your James Bond, and it's a role-playing game. It's put out by a group called TSR now. They took over the name after Wizards of the Coast let it go. And I love that game as well. And so I've put out the first 2 mission books for that game. So we're pretty proud about that.
Yeah, I see something called Arctic Blast. Did you write this one as well?
I didn't write that one. I collaborated and did some editing on it. But a person that works with me named Gary Van Bensinger, he wrote it. And did a fantastic job. Really proud of that one. That's Arctic Blast. I helped write another one that we have called Deep Freeze, Operation Deep Freeze, and Thunderclap. It's actually a 2-part. And me and my daughter-in-law wrote the first half of that one, and then another person wrote the second half of that one. So,
oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was trying to put everything together because we're trying to, write this stuff, but you also get artwork and cartographer to do the maps, and then you graphic artists to lay everything out. It can be quite there's a lot involved in producing a book.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like the art a lot. Especially, can you tell me something about the star on the shore? Because I love, when I met you at the OwlCon, that's the book that grabbed my attention just because of the art. I was sold on the cover of that book.
Oh yeah, that's probably the best cover I've ever that I ever had done. Yeah. I love that cover. And a funny story about that is the artist doesn't like that cover.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. There's after we did it, and I was almost done with the book, and he was still doing some artwork for me. He's like, "I don't like that cover. I want to redo it." And I said, "Well, you can redo it, but I'm not going to promise I'll switch it." And so there's another piece in there that's a little brighter that shows the tentacles coming out of the water around the 2 lighthouses. He wanted that to be the cover. And while I love that piece as well, I think I used it for the cover of the calendar I did. I kept with the double lighthouses, the dark double lighthouses on the Star on the Shore. I just love that cover too much.
This is very, very evocative to me. I get drawn to that stuff. It's really
nice. I love how. Yeah.
I saw your name is all over this thing. So you wrote this whole. It's kind of like a setting, right? It's not an adventure per se. The Star on the Shore.
It is an adventure, but it's a sandbox type adventure. So instead of being like on Devil's Swamp, there's 8 smaller adventures for you to go into, and then it's all set in that Bridgewater area with the Hockomock Swamp. Yeah. This is set in one city. I guess we can say it now. It's a couple of years old now. So spoiler alert. It's in Rockport, Massachusetts, which is about the only... and it does have the double lighthouses, just like shown on the front cover. Oh. Yeah, that's almost... matter of fact, I showed that cover art out on my website and said, "Hey, what do y'all think of this cover art?" And somebody said, "Oh, I love it. It's awesome, except it's not very realistic having 2 lighthouses that close together." And so then I sent up an actual photo of the 2 lighthouses. And it's almost identical.
Seeing how treacherous that terrain is, I bet you those are warranted.
But it's designed to be like a north-south to help the sailors orient themselves on which way is north and south.
It looks like a lot of people died around that area. You've been in the Navy. I guess you could relate to that. That's insane, right there.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. But it's the characters, the investigators are hunting for a stolen statue, and they get the clues to go to Rockport. But when they get there, they know nothing about the city, and they just have to figure out what's going on. And one of the neat things I did in that book was all the NPCs in there, and there's dozens of them. They're all color-coded. And so they're either green if they'll be friendly with you and help you, or orange if they're are against you. Okay. And then if they're yellow, then it depends on how you interact with that NPC on whether he's going to turn against you or help you. Oh, wow. So, and it's but things are happening behind the scenes all the time. There's a timeline that keeps moving forward, and NPCs are doing stuff in the background. It's not just the static setting, and the players can take, all the time in the world to figure out what's going on. Things are moving, and they need to keep up with them and stay ahead of the game, or they'll just get caught up in it. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of work to run something like that, because I don't recommend that one for first-time keepers, because
I don't care. I'm buying it.
But I think it's a great adventure. So
I mean, I don't know. That's the stuff that kind of calls to me. So, and I'm not afraid of doing a little bit of homework.
Yeah,
so,
it does require a little bit of work just to become familiar with the city and stuff like that. So, now I do want to let me throw out there that Star on the Shore was a finalist last year for the Three Castles RPG Award. So that's kind of neat. It didn't win, but it was a finalist.
Yeah, and I saw that was on the cover or something. There was a little tag on the product there. That's what that was. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
And Devil's Swamp is a finalist this year. So,
wow!
I'll find out in June if I win or not. So
guess what? I have a signed copy of that book, so which I will never sell.
Well, there you go.
So,
thank you.
But anyway, tell me a little bit about Devil's Swamp. This is, and I don't mean spoilers. I just because I was reading up a little bit, and this is a real swamp that used to be like an Indian territory where they got displaced, and it was also kind of a burial ground. Is that true?
The Indians revered the swamp, and they lived next to it and near it, and they used it for a lot of things. But the name of it is called the Hockomock. It's a real swamp in Massachusetts. Hockomock is the Indian word for where the spirits dwell, is what it actually stands for. When the colonists moved there, they'd never seen anything like this, and they called it the Devil's Swamp, which is where I get the name of the book. Where the spirits dwell, I use as one of the titles for one of the missions inside the book. So what I've done is built up the city of Bridgewater, and then the swamp itself, I have locations placed in there of where all the different adventures take place, and that's on the Keeper's map. But the idea behind it is you can use them as one-offs, you can try to string them together as one big campaign. You have to change the dates a little bit. They don't quite line up properly, and I created a group called the Bridgewater Preservation Society, which was originally designed to disprove all the horrible things that people say about the Devil's Swamp. Anyway, and then the player characters are members of this, and now not every adventure takes advantage of that. I had three guest writers write for me. Those were stretch goals that we hit in the book, because the book did extremely well on Kickstarter, and so I brought in 3 other writers to help write that for me, and they did great work for me, but they didn't use everything I had in place, so they're kind of off on their own, but they still work, and you can make them work. So
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's one of the best works I've ever done. Really proud of it, and I got high hopes for this year that I'll actually win. So we'll see.
Are you going to put a notice on your website?
Oh yeah.
If and when you win, or?
Oh yeah, you'll see pictures of me with the trophy and everything.
Awesome.
But we'll have to temper my excitement.
Yeah.
I'm going against some very tough competition. Mutant Crawl Classics is in the finals. The rule book for that, and as well as Space Opera rule set, and so it's very tough competition. So we'll see.
Okay. Now that you mentioned the word mutant, I was just thinking about my logo, the Mutant Donkey logo,
how
it's subconsciously a Cthulhu Mythos logo. Because it's like a regular donkey, but he's mutant, and there's like tentacles under the water. Above the water, it looks like a regular donkey, and then under the water, you can see that there's something different. And I never consciously thought about it that way, but it is a Cthulhu. It's a Cthulhu Mythos icon. It's pretty funny. So tell me about the conventions. What conventions can people find you at?
So I do a lot of ones in Texas. Alcon I do on a regular basis. North Texas RPG Con I do every year. This will be the second year I'll be at ChupacabraCon in Austin.
In Austin? Is that next to the Chupacabra Mexican restaurant?
I don't know.
I've been to that restaurant. It's really nice.
I'm going to be a special guest at the Red River Con in Shreveport here in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
And then I also make it up to Wichita, Kansas, to their Tsunami Con there. And then also hit Gary Con, and then I'm going to Gamehole Con as well this year. So.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. Just for my personal reference, the North Texas Con, when is that?
North Texas RPG Con. It's in Dallas every year, and it actually does more old school role playing. So you see a lot more like basic D&D, first edition, second edition D&D, stuff like that. They still have some of the other fifth edition.
Okay.
I usually run a Paranoia game every year and a Call of Cthulhu game every year, and so you get a wide variety of different games there. But they bring down some of the big old school names. It's not uncommon for you to sit down and have a beer with Errol Otis, or to, be talking with Tim Kask about old stuff from TSR. It's one of the most relaxed environments for interacting with special guests I have ever seen in my life.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe I'll make it up there and play some Cthulhu with you.
Oh, it is awesome. I highly recommend it to anybody. It's pretty exclusive. They only do about 300 to 400 people there, and they'll have 20 special guests. The guy who puts that on, Doug, is so fantastic, but he loses his shirt every year on that thing, and he doesn't care. He loves doing it, and he loves bringing in all these big names, and it's great. I had Zeb Cook sit in on a Paranoia game I was running one time, because he wasn't doing anything. And it was just, that's the kind of stuff. I was sitting there telling a story to a friend of mine about Errol Otis and how I bailed on one of his games one year to go play Call of Cthulhu with Sandy Peterson. And I felt so bad about it that I thought I could never sign up for another Errol Otis game. And then I hear somebody behind me say, "It's okay, Ben, you can sign up." And I turn around and there's Errol Otis laughing about the story. No. That's the kind of con it is. It's that fantastic. So anyway, but I'm there every year. So
what time of the year did you say that was?
It's first weekend in June every year.
First weekend in June. Okay, perfect. All right, and I think that's about all the time I have today. Let me see, we've been on like 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, I need to go too. So,
so I guess we can call it a day. But I really appreciate you, Ben. Coming and talking to me.
Not a problem. Really enjoyed it.
Mute Donkey
Podcast News. So now we can start with the news. So do you guys have the notes on the news?
I do.
And I know Kandyman's gonna want to speak up for the first item on the news, right?
Yeah.
Kandyman, take it away, man. I know you're itching to tear into somebody.
Believe it or not, actually, things are, if you can believe it, there's actually some item, well, at least one item that's not on the news here that's new.
Okay, go ahead.
Basically, one of the so the problem we've got right now is exclusivity, and what's really going on, and unfortunately, this isn't even just gaming. It's almost a cultural thing at this point. Everything's getting really heavily fragmented. Everybody wants to have their own service. Basically, in a lot of ways, everyone's trying to cut out the middleman. Nobody wants to have anyone getting a cut of the pie. So, and this has been happening for a while, even between other vendors like Netflix. Took their stuff off Apple. And people are taking their stuff like Epic Games took Fortnite, off the Epic or off the Google Play Store and off the Apple Store and stuff, to put it on their own website. So you got a lot of stuff going on financially where people just don't want to share. And to some degree that makes financial sense, but the problem is, and the same thing's happening with streaming services. Disney Plus just got announced a few days ago at a very aggressive price point, which will probably be good for the consumers in the short term at least.
Yeah, it's like $4 or $5. I was surprised at how low it was.
It's $6.99 or
Okay.
$69.99 a year, which is a phenomenal value. Except that, and so of course the reason I bring it up is to tell you why I don't know that it's a great. I mean, so of course, especially everyone in the world's like, I'm a parent, I'm buying it. Like it's just it's like for the amount of getting my kids off my back. It's a no-brainer. But the problem we've got with both the streaming services and games is that it's getting fragmented, and everyone's pulling their content, pulling their games. Everybody wants to have their own platform. And the problem is that it's getting to the point where it's like cable TV, except it's an even bigger hassle, because now, at least with cable TV, it was a pain in the ass, but at least you could get a bundle. You could basically tell the cable company, like, give me all the channels, and it would cost a bunch of money, but you could do it.
Yeah.
Now you've got to manage, 20 subs. Oh wait, you want to watch the Twilight Zone? You've got to get CBS All Access, and you want to watch, Marvel movies? Oh, you've got to get Disney Plus, and you want to watch UFC fights? You've got to get ESPN Plus, and you want to watch Stranger Things? You need Netflix, blah blah blah. Everyone's got their own thing, and what I think it's going to do. And like I said, everyone's got exclusives because everyone's kind of thinking it's like, well, if I don't have that one, killer thing like Game of Thrones, like Game of Thrones premieres tonight, everyone's going to be, everyone's going to be re-upping their HBO Go. So the problem is it's fragmenting the market, and what I really think is happening, and to be honest with you, has even happened in my case. I mean, I can honestly tell you that I haven't downloaded anything off of, torrents. Since I was in my 20s. Yeah. I'm in my 40s now, and I've resumed because I'm not going to sign up for, CBS All Access to get one show. I'm just not. It's not worth my time. And so what they're doing is, yes, they're pulling a lot of exclusivity stuff, but I think they're pushing people to piracy, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I really do.
So do you think that's going to force them to deal with each other again? To start buying each other's programming and showing it everywhere, or do you think they're going to trade and not share for whatever?
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I do think it's a tough problem. I mean, to some degree, and this is what's terrible, because some people have said, so there's the solution. There's kind of a constant argument that goes on there. One argument is, well, clearly we need another, a cable TV company to basically bundle all this stuff together, so that we don't have to have 27 subscriptions.
They'll be like an internet company now, like consolidating all the services into one. They just charge you once, and then you get all this little internet channels. Right?
Exactly, but then people go, but that's what everyone's like, but we just fired the cable TV companies. We don't want to do that. But for someone like
fire them, they're everywhere. They will come chasing you.
Yeah.
Through time and space, like Lovecraft beasts, they will come chasing you.
But for someone like me, I don't want to individually manage it. For me, I'm not going to have that many services because I don't want to keep track of that many passwords. I honestly almost think we're to the point where it'd be better off if there was, a service where you could manage it. But especially Epic Games, the problem is especially Epic Games is actually, so just to tie it back to what you were talking about, so all this exclusivity stuff's, as a consumer it sucks because it just makes our lives a headache because now you got to remember 87 different passwords. Yeah. If for no other reason than that, it's a hassle.
Yeah.
But then what Epic Games is doing is even actually worse because, so most of the time these studios are like, well, this is our product, this is the show or this is whatever it is we made, and you're going to have to come to us for it. And that's one thing. What Epic Games is doing is far worse. Epic Games is literally going to everyone on the planet and basically saying, oh, you've made a game, we'll give you a big chunk of our Fortnite money to make it so that it only sells in our store.
Yeah.
And so they're taking independent people and basically bribing them to give them 1 year exclusive access to the content.
But you're bribing them after they have already announced that their game's going to be available on Steam, and they go back on their words, even though that was part of their Kickstarter, and a bunch of people that donated money were expecting this game to come to Steam, and now they're going back on their words and saying, "Whoops, it's not going to come to Steam. All you people that gave us money for the game to come to Steam, sorry, it's going to Epic."
Exactly, and it's even worse because honestly, the worst of the worst are the people who did Kickstarters who And in fact, this is the big thing too. So a lot of these people kickstarted the games because one, they were going to get it on Steam, and two, many of the people that kickstarted it wanted to play it on Linux or other operating systems, and Epic doesn't support any of that. There is no big picture, there is no Linux support, there's no, all these things that, people wouldn't have donated their money, now that it's like the games have basically been changed to be Windows only, and the people are like, well, I wouldn't have donated my money. For the Kickstarter if I knew I wasn't going to get a game I could play.
Yeah.
It's really scummy, and it's it's not fair to those people. And then especially these people like the Kickstarters. It's really offensive anyways, because these Kickstarter people are saying, well, Epic gave us so much money for the exclusivity contract that we didn't even, now we could just refund all the Kickstarter money. And it's like, well, that whole situation is crummy. And the other thing I was thinking about, by the way, people are acting like Epic, it's like they're great humanitarians. It's like they only charge like a 12% take of this. Steam charges 30% up front, and then after a certain amount, like 20 million or something, they only charge 20%. Epic Games only charges 12%, and people go, yeah, Epic Games is great. They're giving more money back to the developers, and I really think that's disingenuous, because, quite frankly, the only reason they're charging 12% is that's all people would pay them for what they're offering, because they're not offering anything. All they have is basically a web page with little boxes where you can click a game, pay for it, and download it. There's no reviews, there's no forums, there's no support, there's no other operating system support or online saves or there's practically, it's basically as bare. There's no game reviews. You can't even look at like a game review. So it's so bereft of value. They're not great humanitarians. They're just, people aren't going to give you any more you're not doing enough. You're not earning it.
Well, not only that, but they're
shopping
taking
carts.
Wait, go ahead. What?
They don't even have shopping carts.
Oh, they don't? So how do you bundle? Do you have to make each purchase separately then?
Yep.
Oh, well, that I don't like. Well, I think they're disrespecting consumers in a unique way, which is they're taking choice away from us. Because people are saying, oh, why are you guys complaining? You can still buy the game. I'm like, yes, but consumers like to have choice of where to go and where to get their things. The second that somebody takes that choice away, consumers get mad. And like Kandyman was saying, some of those consumers are going to resort to piracy, because they are not going to want to wait 6 months to play a game they've been waiting years for, like Borderlands 3. And, how come other people are playing it and Epic is making it so we can't play it on day one? And I'm personally mad about it. I'm not going to pirate anything. I'm just going to wait 6 months, but I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be disappointed because I don't want to use Epic, because I don't trust Epic, and I want to use the platforms that I trust and that I like. Ultimately, as a consumer, that's my decision. And when you take my decision away, you get the repercussion of, I'm not going to buy stuff from you. And I think more than enough people feel that way about it, I think. But anyway, that's the way it's happening. I don't know. I know that Epic is not going to be successful. In my heart of hearts, I don't believe they're going to be successful with this angle. At some point, they're going to realize, oh, people are just not buying our stuff, and they're waiting, or they're pirating things, and they're going to go back to Steam. We're going to push them back into Steam again. So, but anyway.
I will say, so the other, it's not on the news list, but the other item of news that I did want to bring up, because this is relatively fresh, like in the last day or so, Apple has now come out and saying they're going to do a thing called Apple Arcade, and they're putting down about $500 million to buy games. Okay. And by surprise, they have already said that they're offering a incentive to go exclusive to the Apple service. So now Apple's doing the same shit.
But not only that, but who the hell plays a computer game on an Apple? First of all, they're overpriced and underpowered. And there's not a lot of games available for Apple compared to PC. So why reduce your choices that way? That seems dumb to me. Unless they start making computers better mobile. Computers, I don't know.
It's probably a bit more on the mobile side of games, although there's been a lot of regular games that have been ported. There's games that have been ported both ways. There's been a few mobile games that have been ported to PC, and there's a decent number of PC games that have been ported to mobile.
Yeah, but I don't think we are the mobile crowd, or the.
Nope.
I don't know. I mean, if there's a true mobile game that doesn't try to milk you at every turn, then I'm okay with that. But in general, I don't. That's why I don't do mobile games, because I don't want to do microtransactions.
Yeah. Well, so the Apple thing, for what it's worth, again, I'm not a I'm not a fanboy, but they said it was going to be, I think it was going to be like $9.99 a month, and all of the games will be included in Apple's service. And I will say the good side of it is all the games will not have, basically it's all inclusive. So if you do pay the subscription fee for the Apple game service, there's no microtransactions. It's all, you pay the money, you get the game. There's no bullshit. So at least that's
Okay.
I hate exclusivity stuff. It's very offensive to me, but at least that part is, makes sense.
And talking about the Borderlands 3 announcement, I don't know if you guys watched the ceremony, but something went horribly wrong, and their trailer didn't want to play, and it was like crashing. Until the guy that was presenting got mad at the people backstage and said, "No, we're gonna sit here until this plays correctly because we worked a hell of a long time on this game, and I want this trailer to play." The guy got pissed. Like, you could tell, like, he wasn't having any of it. This is not going to happen. We're going to wait here. We're going to extend the show until the tech people backstage figure out what to do and how to play this trailer correctly. And they did. And they worked. So, anyway, I'm extremely excited about Borderlands 3. So, I'm looking for it. For anybody who wants an extra shift code, the shift code from that ceremony for Borderlands 2, shift code is a little code you put in there and it gives you, like, rewards, little coin things. It's WSGST. That was a shift code that was announced during their presentation. In case anybody still plays Borderlands 2, I know Ethansito just bought the Borderlands package, right?
Yep.
And so you're playing Borderlands 1 right now, and that comes with Borderlands 2. It comes from Tales from the Borderlands as well, does it, or no?
No, it's the Handsome Jack collection.
Oh, okay.
That's on sale right now, which includes the pre-sequel and Borderlands 2. But then they also dropped the Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced Edition, where
cool.
they redid the textures, and they also added in the minimap from Borderlands 2 into Borderlands 1.
Okay. Alright. Well, I want to switch next to a topic that has been kind of under the radar, that I think is very important, and that's Article 13, which passed in the EU at the beginning of the month, I think. And it's going to be effective in 2021. And this is extremely harsh copyright laws for YouTubers and streamers. Now, this is in the EU, so we're thinking, well, this doesn't affect us at all. Well, it does, because a lot of the people that watch your content are also in Europe. And guess what? If you mention something that may be copyrighted, not only can you get sued for it, but YouTube can get sued for it. Twitch can get sued for it. Whatever platform that you use to stream or to say can now be sued for every little infraction. So they're going to have to make they have to micromanage everybody to the extreme, to where you're going to get denied your videos right away until you can prove in writing that you're not violating any copyright laws. And that is going to slow people down. Not myself personally, because I'm not a Twitch streamer, but there's a lot of Twitch streamers that are going to be very mad about this thing. And it's going to be effective in 2021. And this is going to affect...
I've heard a lot of bad things about this. Basically, a lot of people are saying, a lot of the European people are saying that they, of course, who knows if this is going to happen because we do the same thing, but they're saying that you need to vote their representatives out, that they've sold out to the, to the industry, basically, that they've betrayed their constituents, which, in my opinion, they completely have. Now the question is, will they pay the price? And that's, that's a much harder question to answer.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is why the companies would want this to happen, because streaming is one of the biggest ways for them to get publicity.
Well, it's not the game manufacturers that are necessarily doing it. It's a lot of times it would be, even something like YouTube, where it's a question of the more that they can demonetize. They're still going to show ads in a demonetized video, but if they don't have to give it to the creator, the content creator, then they get to keep it themselves. And
it's like what they tried to do to Star Wars Theory when Lucasfilm or whatever they were claiming a copyright violation on the music that was kind of similar, and they wanted to monetize his video, and so they wanted to take his video away from him in a way and make money off of it.
Right. So, I mean, that's a big chunk of how they make their funding. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a lot of YouTubers will be mad about that, but I don't know. At some point, maybe getting a real job is not a bad thing. I don't know. When you realize that most of your money is coming from the kids of people that break their back working, right? And then a lot of I get mad at some of the YouTubers because they're saying, "Oh, we're so cool, we're making all this money and we don't have to leave the house," and everybody else is a loser because they have to have real jobs. I'm like, dude, you realize that people with the real jobs are paying your ticket, right? Your meal ticket. So insulting them may not be the smartest thing. So if you're a YouTuber and you think you're the shit, well, come down to earth, man. Because one day you may find yourself having to work at a real office, and I pity you. I pity somebody that has no skills, to make it in the real world. So that's my 2 cents on that matter. Because there's too many spoiled YouTubers out there. I'm sorry, but there are. And they just, every once in a while they rub me the wrong way. Anyway, I was looking at articles on GameSpot the other day, and I realized every single ad banner was a U.S. Army ad banner. And I bring this up because at a conversation somewhere, somebody had mentioned that the U.S. Army is at a record low of people signing up for the Army. And so I think they're identifying that there's a lot of gamers that are really lazy, don't want to do anything, that they don't want to sign up to defend their country, and that, God forbid, they reinstitute the draft, because people are not volunteering to serve their country. I don't know. You guys have any opinion about this?
The Army's been having a lot of trouble with recruitment for a while because, as it turns out,
people don't want to die.
Well, and there's war fatigue. We've, since World War II, you got the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. Everybody gets super patriotic and they all volunteer. Very minimal draft during World War II, and in fact, those that were drafted were often looked down on. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the Korean War, and all of a sudden it's this kind of amorphous, so it's communism that's bad, and the Chinese are communists, so we've got to help. And ever since then, war has been this sort of unending thing. And the fact of the matter is that we're not fighting for American freedom. We're not fighting for a grander global, unity. It really is sort of this disingenuous, well, our gas prices are going to go up and we like having that, so let's go deal with this. Or, these people flew into our buildings, and now we've, what do we do about that? Well, let's go overthrow 2 governments, and now we're never going to be able to leave there because we've got to help keep our governments, which, by the way, our country has never successfully installed a government after basically any war. We now have to foot the bill for it, and you've got a lot of these, young men and women that are like, I've got enough on my plate already. I've got to figure out if I'm going to do college or if I'm going to go into the workforce. I got to figure out how I'm going to feed, to build a life. Yeah. And the military is just not the avenue for a great many of them. 15 years ago when I started teaching, every class I'd have, and I'd ask, what are you guys doing after high school? You got 3 to 5 people saying I'm going into the military. And I think in the last 2 years, I've had 1 kid that's kicking it around. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're really hurting for nothing. It's more a question of, it's not a question of gamers being too lazy to do anything. It's a question of, they don't see any reason to go out and fight these wars and potentially die or be maimed.
And I don't think it helps either, quite frankly, that, I think there's probably some stigmas. I mean, knowing what I know now, I think I would. Well, first of all, one of the things I read that's interesting is apparently the percentage of people who meet the standards between especially with the drug laws and nonsense like that. People who smoke marijuana, this, that, the other. People with physical fitness, weight, whatever. There's only 30% of people that age are even qualified to enlist.
Well, that's kind of scary, what you just said.
Yeah, but then when you look, especially like I said, a lot of it's stupid stuff like drugs. I mean, if they legalize, soft drugs, they would probably have a lot more people too. But on top of that, I mean, just from my perspective, now that I know what I know, quite frankly, first of all, there's a lot of mental illness that comes from being in the military. There's a lot of suicides, there's a lot of mental illness, and then secondly, if you look at the support that the veterans are given now, especially with regards to the VA system, the hospitals and stuff. Yeah. I mean, you look at that and you hear about these stories, people losing a hand and they give them a retirement with a 10% pen. It's like they might have lost the major use of their hand, but they get a 10% pension or something. It's like, you just look at how they I don't feel like they have your back.
Yeah, like they're
I wouldn't
training
do
you. Yeah. Well, I guess that all started kind of with the Vietnam War, right? Like how they treated the Vietnam. I know that's a highly controversial issue, but you know the way they kind of treated the veterans, you know, the people that were just kind of doing what the country asked of them to do, and how people, their own compatriots, when they came back home, didn't like them when they were throwing crap at them, and how, you know, they're not mentally stable, you know, and they had to live their rest of their lives with those maladies, and I don't think that's fair. I don't know. And these people were drafted. So, but anyway.
Yeah.
That's maybe a topic for another time. That's a kind of heavy topic, but I didn't want to take us there, but you know. Anyway. So, let's go lighter. Are you guys excited that Warcraft 1 or 2 are available on Good Old Games?
I'm always excited about any news coming out of Good Old
Games? You cut out for a second.
Oh, I said I'm always excited about any news coming out of Good Old Games. That's a really fun site, and yeah, the old Warcraft games were an absolute kick. I remember playing those back in the '90s and setting up LAN parties where we would actually run telephone cords for between our dorm rooms so we could play against each other.
So, do you think that's going to have internet support then? Are you going to be able to play multiplayer online? Those old games?
Oh, I really hope so. Because wow, what a fun afternoon that'd be.
That's awesome. So we got Warcraft 1 and 2 on Good Old Games. We also have Diablo 1 on Good Old Games, and then we have the remake of the Frozen Throne coming to Blizzard, right? I don't know if it's this year. Hopefully, I don't know.
That one I hadn't heard about.
Yeah. We talked about it in one of the other podcasts, the one that you weren't in, but there was the Blizzard announced during their big announcement where they said there was a Diablo mobile game. That the earlier part of that announcement was that there was
right, because don't you have phones?
Exactly. Right before they said that, they had announced Warcraft 3 remaster, basically. So.
Yeah, I think Blizzard, I recall anyways, you know, I could completely be off my rocker here, but I recall, I think Blizzard, I think if you use the Battle.net launcher, I think like the original StarCraft, you can play for free on Battle.net now.
Yes, and the other one, the Battle Brood Wars, I think, you can play Brood Wars for free also.
So that's pretty cool, but this is totally tangential, but I thought I'd throw this out here. I loved Warcraft, I loved Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
There's a game called Grim Dawn, and Grim Dawn is basically I would consider it to be like a modern Diablo.
Isn't that
it's
a
Warhammer
really game?
What's that?
Isn't that a Warhammer game, maybe? Or
no, it's an action role playing game. I mean, it's definitely not Warhammer. I mean, it's kind of set. It's kind of just, you know, fantasy.
Okay.
But it's an ARPG, and it's really surprisingly very solid. I mean, if you liked, you know, kind of like Diablo 2,
mm-hmm.
It's kind of got randomly rolled items, and you know, make your character, you know, skill trees and characters and items and stuff, and it's like a very modern Diablo. Different, but you know, it's not. I mean, it doesn't have like the Blizzard style. You know, it's the creatures and stuff are not, of course, Blizzard style and animations and stuff. But
yeah,
it's a very good game. It's a completely different, but quite good ARPG. I'd recommend it. You can get it. There's a couple expansions now. So the base game, you can get it like on sale for like just a couple of bucks. So it's totally worth it.
But there was also a new Warhammer game that hasn't come out yet. That's about to drop. That was in the style of Chaos Bane, coming soon, June 4th. Have you guys looked at Chaos Bane?
No, I haven't.
Because that looks like an awesome Diablo-like, with the Warhammer characters and the elf and the dwarf, you know, kind of like Vermintide. Talking about Vermintide, I think you and I own Vermintide 2, and I think Kandyman does too. So we need to get on there at some point and play that, because I heard that's a lot. Oh, you played. You talked about it on the first podcast.
I did. I really enjoy that game. I've been having a lot of fun with it.
So we need to play that, and then if you want to join us at some point for Monster Hunter, you're welcome to. Which I saw you purchased because I've been stalking you on Steam. So.
Well, yeah, no. It's just every time I would come on, you and Andy and everybody else is playing. I'm like, well, why didn't I get the invite?
Yeah, sorry about that. But anytime you guys want to play, when I'm playing, I'm always going to be on the Mutant Donkey Discord. So if you guys look me up, I'll be there playing that. So
excellent.
The other game that's been taking the internet by storm is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is kind of like Dark Souls. and every like Twitch streamer has been on this thing for like a month or however long since this game came out. And apparently it's really good, and there's some people complaining that it's really hard, but then again, it's Dark Souls-like, right? So it's supposed to be really hard. So from my point of view, I don't think Kandyman would like it. So
You know, I don't really play games to rage quit. And there's a couple of games where I get it if you can do it and the challenge is there and you enjoy that kind of intense experience, then go for it. But honestly, if everybody's like, oh, you're going to hate this game, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I am.
And then I just don't do it.
Yeah. I'm a little bit masochistic, so I may enjoy that game. There's a couple... What's that?
Oh no, sorry. I was just gonna say no. I've heard it's very good. I mean, to some degree, I'm a little more interested. Like I've been playing Monster Hunter, and that game can be a little punishing at times, but there is some satisfaction in getting your ass kicked a handful of times and then coming back and putting the thing down. So I do kind of get it a little more.
Yep. Yeah, and actually, if you're in a group, then you come back together, and you're all sharing that frustration. So it kind of builds upon you guys, and so you're like supporting each other. Okay, this time we're gonna take it down. It becomes into a really team effort, and you can give each other support. I think it's a good group building activity. Personally, playing Monster Hunter. So Kandyman, do you want to talk about Kenshi for a little bit? Because I know Kenshi 2 was just announced, and I didn't realize that Kenshi 1 was now out of early access, right? So. Yeah,
honestly, it was. I really enjoyed that game. It's really a wonderful game. I mean, when we went to Belize, I was still hooked on it, and I played it quite a bit while we were there. It's a super fun game. So basically, it really scratches a couple of itches for me. One is, so I love base building games. I mean, there's literally like a Reddit subreddit called like base building games, and I love any game where I can build a base, where you can like sit there like 7 Days to Die, where you can just sit there and build up a base. It's really a fun experience for me. But the second thing is, the game does a really magical job of basically encompassing. It's probably the biggest game I've ever played that encompasses like the 0 to hero thing. So when you start out, you are utterly pathetic. I mean, so all the skills go to like 100. Yeah. You literally start with zeros. I mean, you are utterly pathetic. You literally start the game off by basically basically fight, and there's skills called like toughness, and you literally go out and just unless you get like a bunch of guys, unless it's like 4-on-1, you're probably gonna like lose any fight. But typically you get your ass kicked. You just go out, and they like beat you up, and then they typically like will take your stuff and leave you for dead, and then you'll just like get up and bandage yourself and rest, and do that whole thing. So basically you start off like you have no weapon skill, no combat skills, no offense, no defense, no toughness. Like anyone who hits you, you take extra damage because you're so soft. And then you build yourself up. So you go, and like I said, you're going to get your ass kicked over and over. Like you were just going to get, like raiders are going to come through town and just, knock everyone unconscious and take all your stuff. And it's this really hard start. But then you start building up your toughness, and you start building up your weapon skill, and you start getting equipment. And, you make a go of it, and you get strong, and you get your, it's got a really good system. It's got like a lot of weapon systems. It's got a lot of different weapons, swords, ranged weapons. It's got martial arts, and like all the attacks, you have like body parts, like arms and legs and torso and head, and attacks will hit various things and have, like, it's really common to get like your arm or leg, injured to the point, like, and if your leg is hurt, you'll limp, and if your like arm is disabled, it will like hang like limply at your side.
Yeah.
It's really hyper realistic, and it's also one of the other things it does that's really cool. Like I said, it's a base building game, but it does an incredible thing, which is like a lot of role playing games. When you switch areas, like you'll go off the map border, right? It'll say like loading, please wait, and then you'll like enter into the next area. This game, you're all on the world map. Like you never zone. Like you can split up your guys. Like you can literally have like one guy running to one place and one guy running to another, and you can like go back and forth. It's like an RTS. It's very much like a combination of an RTS and a role playing game.
Yeah. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought so.
So you you can have multiple bases, and you can have your guys doing stuff, and you can, I usually leave some guys at my base, and then they'll go out and like roam the world and kill things, and it's all just the same world. Like you can switch between your groups and your bases and stuff, and you just basically go like rolling around, and you just like go to bars and stuff, and you just like find people to recruit, and they all basically start off pathetic, but you can later on you can start building like training dummies, and they can sit there and like do some training, against inanimate objects, like practice picking locks and stuff like that.
It's a little bit like Warband, you would say.
Which one? Warband?
Warband, the medieval game where the one that you got.
The one that you got me for my
Mountain Blade.
Mountain Blade.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So it's funny because after I played Kenshi, I went to Mountain Blade Warband. It's very much the same thing. It's basically like your intrepid group of heroes. Then you just kind of open world, go around, look for trouble. Beat people up, take their stuff.
Yeah, and as far as I know, Warband 2 doesn't have a release date yet, right?
Yeah, the new one's called Bannerlord, and people have been salivating over that for years, and allegedly it's coming. It should be really good when it comes out. And I'll also say Warband has a really, really solid modding community. There's a lot to be done there. It's a like I said, Kenshi and Warband are both very similar in that you have kind of heroes that you can build into a band and develop. They're both really fun if you like to kind of play open world sandbox. Make a group of heroes.
Okay, cool. The other game I want to briefly touch on is this new game Outward, because I think this is one that we may enjoy playing together, kind of like 7 Days to Die, which is like a fantasy-based open-world survival game. Now, I know that it's kind of glitchy and people are kind of mad, but right now it's got a mostly positive review on Steam. 2 weeks ago it had a mixed review, so maybe they're moving the right direction. But it's just an open world where you're in fantasy and you just gotta find your way, and you can quest with friends, and a real RPG experience. I don't know.
Which game was this?
It's called Outward.
I was reading about that one too, and it sounded. I read the reviews of that. It's weird that you bring it up because I was reading about that one yesterday, and then people were complaining that like you spend a lot of time traveling, like running back and forth.
Yeah, because you're walking from one place to the other one. The game doesn't hold your hand, so you just literally have to walk for hours in real time. Whatever.
But what if you like having your hand held?
Well, too bad, man. Go play, I don't know, Hello Kitty Island Adventure.
I love Hello Kitty Island Adventure.
Butters played it.
Well, that's from the South Park episode Make Love Not Warcraft.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I mean, I'm just for people that don't know our inside jokes. So, but anyway, we're getting kind of towards the end of this particular podcast, so I want to touch on a couple more things, which are the Joker and Black Widow trailers. You guys have any first reactions on those?
It looks cool.
Okay.
The Joker one, I haven't seen Black Widow.
I really am curious to see what they do with the Joker. It's such a... Boy, after Heath Ledger played that role, I don't know why anybody would even square up to attempt it.
I think it's just like actor ego. Every actor now wants to take a shot at it because they want to say, "Oh, I bet I can do it better."
And if anybody could, Joaquin Phoenix sure could. That man does tortured really well. But then again, I am kind of in the throes of superhero burnout right now. So,
well, he's not a superhero, so you're safe.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
And he does act like a real clown, which I actually don't like clowns in real life. So this is, in a way, this Joker kind of distorts me a little bit more than the other ones, because he to me, he's kind of like a real clown, right? I don't know.
So on the subject of real clowns, you know how I've spent all of my life saying that I'm not, Mr. Bakersfield or whatever. The Zach Galifianakis show, Baskets.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't seen it, it's kind of a weird, dark comedy about this guy who is in France trying to become a clown, and he loses his scholarship to clown school, so he has to go back home to live with his mother.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
His mother lives in Bakersfield, California.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the establishing shot of Bakersfield, California, you can see my house.
Really?
Honest to God, my house. You're looking right into my backyard.
Next to a yellow mountain, right?
Yes, that is on the Yellow Mountain.
Ethansito's laughing because he remembers the Yellow Mountains when we went to visit you. So that was... That's awesome. I didn't realize that. What was the name of the show again? Basket what?
Baskets.
Baskets, okay. And what's it on?
I think it's FX.
FX, okay. Is it on Netflix now, or is it?
It's
only...
on Hulu.
I know it's on Hulu.
Okay.
It might be on Netflix.
We'll definitely check that out. The Black Widow trailer looked awesome to me from the point of view that it looked like real. I always like, because Black Widow to me is not a superhero. She's maybe a hero or an assassin, but she's a spy. Yeah, she's a spy, and that whole ballet kind of school thing where they secretly train women to be assassins. That's freaking awesome. I don't know. I really, like you're saying, that doesn't touch on the superhero fatigue, because to me, it has nothing to do with the Avengers or anybody else. It just has to do about the life of this little girl that was raised in an assassin school, ballet, whatever, you know? And to me, that's interesting as a story. It doesn't really have to touch on anything supernatural or anything like otherworldly. It can just be her life and all the trials that she had to deal with to become a double agent or whatever she became. So, I'm actually excited about that. I know a lot of people say too little too late. I'm like, no, bring it, man. Give her due, honestly.
I don't know. With Marvel phase 3 wrapping up right now, I guess they're sort of looking for what comes next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think this is a fresh turn, in my personal opinion. I don't know if people like it, but to me this is a fresh turn that humanizes the hero a little bit more. So,
well, anything getting Scarlett Johansson work fine in my book.
Yep, you got it. And then the other thing that I've been watching is Love, Death, and Robots, and I gotta say, I haven't watched all of them. Those little short stories are captivating. And the art is awesome. The art style for some of those things, it's insanely good. Highly recommend it.
I watched all of them.
It's mature though, so just be aware if you go watching that stuff. There is like... It borders on like anime porn or whatever, you know. But anyway.
Yeah, the term gratuitous applies nicely to just about all of them. And with any anthology theories, it's got its series. It's got its strengths and its weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of them that. What was the one? The Witness, where it's the woman sees a man kill somebody in an apartment and then runs around,
and it's just a cycle. It's awesome.
Sorry,
we just spoiled it.
Okay, that's fine. From a story standpoint, it's okay, fine. But again, the term gratuitous applies, and I'm not a prude. I don't mind nudity or whatever. But if literally the only purpose to the back end of the entire story is just to have her running down the street without any clothes on, it struggles.
Yeah.
For me, the series really kind of finds its center when it's. The one that I really loved was called Suits.
That's what I was going to say. You and I are of the same mind. I showed that one to Ethan. Yeah, that's awesome.
If I want it to be a game.
I want it to be a game.
Right. If I got to drive around in a giant mech killing space bugs, and that's what a farmer was, I would be a farmer.
Exactly.
I would be happy to. I get to take care of cows and grow stuff and then blow up bugs.
Yep.
But it's funny because when they hit a great deal of emotional depth, and they do it within about 15 minutes. Right now we're there's been sort of a movement recently. Short films have really started kind of hitting their stride. It started off in the 90s where you had those little fan-made short films like Troopers, the Star Wars fan stuff.
Yeah.
And as the computer technology, the graphics work, everything's kind of been catching up and becoming less and less expensive. You can have these really amazing short films. In fact, there was one that I was watching the other day. It's called The Lookout. It's do you guys remember the old Penny Arcade comics?
I mean, I know Penny Arcade. I never really read their comics, so.
Well, it's based on one of them, and it was a short film. It's made by a couple, David and Kristen Bisquette, out of San Francisco. It's called Redgate Films.
Okay.
And they just did this thing. It was basically like, it didn't take much. They didn't have a huge crew. They didn't have a huge budget, and they made this thing that was incredibly good. If you go to like YouTube and you're looking at like Dust, they're great little films. And while again, they're not all going to hit for one reason or another. It's and I've been really impressed with that short run medium right now, and Sex, Death, and Robots really kind of scratches that itch in a couple of them.
It does. Like you were saying, Suits, I could have a bad day at work and watch Suits, and I'll be happy. That just makes me happy for some reason. It's like the whole thing is like a cutscene from a video game. It's so cool.
And like I said, it packs a lot of emotion in a really short space. There are some of them that were just clearly little experimental things done to show kind of an animation style. There's the one called Zima Blue.
I don't think I saw that one, did I? Is that where in space or?
It's the artist.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
Well, the style on it is a little jarring whenever you start off. The people are it's sort of this weird, elongated, compressed thing, and it's just about this artist who's creating these massive works of art and kind of discovering where he gets his inspiration from. And it was, again, a really kind of bizarre. The visuals were really great. But you were right. It's a very mature thing, and you're going to see it's not just lots of wang dang doodles hanging around.
Plenty of TNA.
Yeah, and it's worth a watch. It is really worthwhile because there's a few of them in there where it's not going to be the same for everybody, but there's a few of them in there where it's, as you're watching it, you're like, this is really pretty special.
Yep, that's right. Okay, well now we're getting to the close of the podcast, but we need to talk about the last big item, which is the trailer for Star Wars dropped a couple of days ago. So, did you guys watch it, and what did you think?
Images were great. It doesn't give me enough to run on as far as the story goes. So it was one of those ones where we're not seeing anything new. There's not the new planet where it's like, holy crap, that's something we've never seen before.
Yet another desert planet.
We got a desert planet. We've got what's probably going to be indoor. We've got
because that's where the star crashed, right? The
Death Star.
The Death Star 2 crashed there.
And you've got great costuming. I'm really excited. I've really liked the new cast. I'm glad to see that Mark Hamill's returning as a Force Ghost. I mean, you knew he would, but you really want to see it.
Okay, so what about the title? This thing's called Rise of Skywalker, right? Who is Skywalker? At this point, they've killed Skywalker, so who is Skywalker? I mean, Ben is a Solo, right? Are we saying that he's a Skywalker? Are they going to say that Rey's suddenly a Skywalker somehow?
It could be in reference to the fact that Skywalker's legend will... That it's, even though the bloodline has died out, the name will still persist. And, technically, and while he may be named a Solo, still has Skywalker blood in him, so... Yeah,
but he's not actually named Skywalker. I don't know. I just think it would be kind of weird for them to end that trilogy without a definite Skywalker.
It's entirely possible. And I really hope, for the sake of the story, that it's not... that there isn't one. That there isn't an actual, this is Luke's... Rey is Luke's daughter. Yeah. I don't want to see that.
Yeah,
you could write it in, fine, but it's not really what I want to see. Or if they do it, they'd better do something really special with it.
Yeah, Ethansito and I came up with a theory that it's a walked out theory that the Emperor was the one that got Shimi pregnant, because I never stood up for that midichlorian thing killed Star Wars for me. So I wanted to say that there was no midichlorians, so that means that the Emperor got Shimi pregnant, and guess what? They had twins. And the other one ends up being Ventress. And when she gets pregnant, she hides it from the Emperor. And guess what? Guess who Ventress's great-granddaughter is, or whatever. It could be Rey, or, whatever. Anyway, Ventress is the most interesting character to me from that part of the Star Wars universe storytelling.
Yeah.
So
Andres and I were talking the other day, and my thought about this whole thing was, quite frankly, I think the Star Wars universe is one of the one of the best IPs, if you want to be so, cold. It's really a wonderful IP. It's a wonderful universe. I think it's a place that a lot of us would like to spend time, but I just think that the original movies, the original trilogy, the original characters, and then them trying to like fit in movies between episodes, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, whatever. I think the whole thing's played out. I think and no more fucking reboot. Pardon my language, but no more reboots.
Yeah,
no
I
more
agree.
reboots.
I
Stop
agree.
rebooting it. Stop revising the history.
Mhm.
Let's take this wonderful universe and let's do something new.
Yeah, time for the Clone Wars stuff to stop. Everything in between, stop it. Start anew. Go to the Knights of the Old Republic like they're gonna do. I don't know if Rian Johnson is the correct choice. I know a lot of people are gonna be angry if Rian Johnson gets to do the Knight of the Old Republic trilogy. In the end, I don't care. I am like, with Kandyman. I want something new. Definitely. The Mandalorian is gonna scratch that itch, I think. I don't know if the other one, because although I consider Rogue One as to be the 4th greatest Star Wars movie,
Rogue One was very good. It was the only one that had any spark of the original trilogy. It's the only one that was even in the same galaxy, pardon the pun.
Yeah, but now they want to do a spin-off with that Spanish actor from the Rogue One. I'm like, that guy wasn't that compelling to me. He was okay, but I don't want to see a spin-off show about him. I don't know why they chose that. They make the weirdest decisions, in my opinion. The Mandalorian is a solid decision. That other one, the Rogue One spin-off, I don't... They already milked Rogue One, and it paid out for them. They don't need to keep milking that. Like Kandyman said, do something new. Take a little risk. You got the money. Do it. If it doesn't turn out, you lost some money, So... I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. And the fact is that if you're looking at Star Wars as an IP, best Star Wars that they've been doing over the last... I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting any hate on the sequel. I've really enjoyed all... I've found a lot of positives in Solo. I actually enjoyed that movie. Apparently, I'm one of the few. But I've enjoyed watching that movie. And... but if you watch the animated series, like Clone Wars, it's you want Star Wars, to me, that's Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it's a little episodic and it's a little silly, but that's what the original Star Wars trilogy was being modeled after. So it feels like those early serialized Flash Gordons. And as a result, I've been enjoying watching it with my son.
I mean, to be honest, I think Clone Wars is better than the prequels. That's my personal opinion.
I think that's a really solid point of view.
And if they had made... The Clone Wars is what I wanted the prequels to be. Like a slightly more refined version of Clone Wars, although Clone Wars has some really good episodes. But like I said, in my opinion, it's run its course now. We've had different versions of this Clone Wars stuff since the mid 2000s, the first 2000 decade, whatever.
Yes.
So I think it's time to...
Bad boy for quite a while. I mean, different takes too. Different mediums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, in my opinion, more Star Wars is better than less Star Wars. Although I think, as an old school Star Wars fan, I think I have to say, maybe for me the canon for me ends at 1983, let's say, and everything else is just kind of icing, and maybe not take it as seriously, because otherwise I get too stressed about it. Just let's just approach it that way, and then when you don't have high expectations, you just end up enjoying whatever they produce. Let's just enjoy whatever they make. Okay?
Yes,
that's
honestly, that's what they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be something joyous. It's supposed to be something fun and silly and out there, and maybe you find some meaning in it, because there's always meaning to be found in these things. But really, if you're just I mean, I get it. As soon as the word Metachlorian came into canon, it was like, come on. And it took me years to sort of recenter and be like, come on, dude, it's a movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
there's people in this world that have real problems, and
I know.
And you don't like a concept in a space movie with lightning swords.
I'm just in denial. As far as I'm concerned, the midichlorians just never happened. What midichlorians? What original? Exactly. What first 3 movies? We started with 4.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I saw somebody had mentioned, the next thing that Star Wars should do is probably a Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi buddy series. I'd love to see those two, going through the trials
banter.
and just discovering, just going out and living in the universe together. That'd be pretty awesome.
You know what I would like? A Quentin Tarantino version of those two characters just going around shooting the shit in different bars and killing people. That would just be awesome. Yeah, I bet you can't levitate him and make him land on your sword. And they just get drunk and start doing stupid stuff, I don't...
In the Star Wars anthology comics that they put out, there was actually a short story that had Mace Windu and Yoda in a diner. That it was basically the opening to Pulp Fiction, and these bounty hunters kick in and start getting ready to, tear the joint up. And as they're sitting there debating the true nature of the Force and what it means, for the one to show up and bring balance, and one of them's like, Yoda's like, or Mace Windu is like, it's like this cream in coffee. You put a little bit of cream in the coffee, and now there's balance. And Yoda takes the salt and dumps it on the table. It's like, look, here's two, a Sith or a master and an apprentice, and here's all the Jedi. And then he blows everything away, and there's just two left. And he's like, now you've got balance. And so it's that argument. And then, of course, the lightsaber that said, bad MF on it, and
which, by the way, Kandyman has that wallet. I saw her. I saw it
does.
To release that.
I've seen it. It is amazing.
That's so cool. Oh man. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So, thanks to
all right, guys,
Kandyman and Ethansito for showing up today. By the way, I'm transitioning in directly into Monster Hunter after this podcast. So if you guys want to play some Monster Hunter, I'm gonna be online.
Okay.
For the regular evening.
I'm down for that.
And
I have got to go to the grocery store.
Okay, well, have fun with that. We're gonna kill some grubbles. And then I just wanted to announce that I'm gonna have Dwayne Moore from DM Double Games in the next podcast. He's gonna be interviewed here in the next couple of weeks. He's a guy that we met at the MagCon in New Caney, Texas, and we demoed one of his games, which is a Dominion style one. It's kind of like a card building game, and it was a lot of fun. And it's going to be in Kickstarter in the near future, so I want to bring him in so he can talk about that. So
Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne. He's going to be in the next podcast. So with that, I thank you guys, and I bid you adieu.
Have a good one.
Okay. You guys
Adios.
Hasta la pasta.
Bye.
Guys, it's a pleasure.
All right.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I'm gonna go to the Monster Hunter and hunt the monsters.
Okay. We'll see you there shortly.
Okay. All right. Talk to you guys later.
All right. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Mutant Donkey podcast. If you'd like to contact us, please send us an email at mutantdonkey@gmail.com. That's Mutant Donkey with a 3 instead of an E at gmail.com. We will also put this email address in the show notes. Thank you.